Chapter 36. When it came to flower arrangement, Jingwan was even more knowledgeable. "Grandfather, I'll show you." In front of one of the stalls, Jingwan used the flower branches that had been cut off and a small basket that looked a little tattered. She filled it with dead branches and leaves. As for the flower branches, she just casually trimmed and cut them before inserting them into the basket one by one. She also did some decorations on the edges. In a short period of time, the things that people didn't pay attention to had completely changed. It looked a little messy, but it was very pleasing to the eye. It was even elegant. Even the most picky person would at most look down on the things that were used, but would not look down on the whole thing. Luo Peishan loved flowers, but he also did not want them unless they were famous. Only today did he know that he was short-sighted. Just like that person, those with extraordinary status were always in the minority. Most of them were commoners. Could it be that they could deny their emotions? Could it be that they did not have beauty and value? They did, and they were very high. It seems that grandfather still needs to learn from Wanwan. Not flower arrangement, but values. Although Luo Peishan did not know this word. In a trance, he seemed to recall the past when he was an official. He thought that he should be a good official, but perhaps it was far from enough. Jingwan did not know that in a flash, her grandfather thought so much. She took the handkerchief from the servant girl and wiped her hands. From the moment Jingwan started to do it, there were many onlookers. At first, they were puzzled, but later, they were full of admiration. They looked at her with curiosity. Although she looked like an ordinary person, her words and actions did not seem like they came from an ordinary family. Therefore, they did not dare to be rude. However, the stall owner did not stop Jingwan because she touched his things without permission. He got a bunch of flowers for free. Even if he could not sell it, it was still pleasing to the eye. Just as she walked out of the crowd, she saw an old man with a smile on his face. However, this old man's skin was very white, whiter than most women. Moreover, his beard looked relatively sparse. Even his Adam's apple was not obvious. Jingwan thought that when this person was young, he was most likely mistaken for a woman. However, her grandfather, who was originally smiling, immediately pulled a long face when he saw this person. It was obvious that the two of them knew each other. Perhaps they were enemies. The white-faced old man cupped his hands together. "Greetings, Lord Luo." Luo Peishan looked at him disapprovingly, as if he really wanted to ignore him. The old man's smile remained unchanged as he looked at Jingwan. "This is Lord Luo's granddaughter? The flowers are arranged so well." Luo Peishan snorted. "My second son's legitimate daughter, third in rank." "This is Lord Diwu of the Supreme Court." "Greetings, Lord Diwu." Jingwan curtsied in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. She was well-mannered. "Good, good. Little girls are the best. Unlike us old men, who are hated by others." The fifth Taiching stroked his beard. Jingwan was speechless. No wonder they didn't want to deal with him. Look at how much hatred he had. "Little girl, Lord Diwu's house has the most complete camellias. However, grandfather seems to be missing the 18 scholars and the strong fragrance. Also, the flower crane plume doesn't look good. Alas, what a pity." Every time Luo Peishan spoke, a strand of the fifth Taiching's beard would break. Then, a few strands were broken in succession. It was already a small number to begin with. Jingwan felt sorry for him when she saw it. He said you were hated by others, but you turned around and poked his soft spot? They were old friends. They knew each other's moral character very well. In the court, they were the kind of people who did business according to the rules. In private, especially when it came to flowers, they would blow their beard and glare at each other. Luo Peishan usually restrained himself, but in front of several people who knew his preferences, his image and face had already been torn to the side. How could some words just be said? "Why, Lord Luo, do you know where to find the 18 scholars, strong fragrance, and better flower crane plume?" The fifth Taiching was still able to hold his ground. "I do know where to find it. The 18 scholars have seen it. It's about to bloom. It looks much better than the defective goods that some people keep in their homes." The fifth Taiching's beard was broken again. "Old man Luo, don't play dumb with this old man. What do you want? Hurry up and say it." Luo Peishan didn't want to pay attention to him. With Jingwan around, what famous goods couldn't he get? In the future, it would only be others who would beg him. Just wait and see. If he didn't make up for all the anger he had suffered in the past, he wouldn't be Luo Peishan. He didn't know whether old man Luo was telling the truth or deliberately teasing him. However, as long as there was a slight possibility, the fifth Taiching didn't want to give up. He had been yearning for it for too long. Therefore, like a small attendant, he wandered around Luo Peishan. And Luo Peishan acted like an old master. That scene made people want to cover their faces and couldn't bear to look directly at it. Didn't you see that Lord Diwu's attendant looked like he couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in? It was too embarrassing in public. "Master, you should at least wait for a place where there is no one around." Jingwan was laughing at the side. It turned out that as long as they had the same interests, these powerful and decisive old men could be so cute. Jingwan suddenly saw something more unexpected. She walked forward, reached out, and carefully picked up a small thing that looked like a lotus flower. It was half the size of a palm and had thick cotyledons. She put it on her handkerchief and looked at it carefully. Yes, it was indeed a guanyin lotus. She remembered that the origin of this succulent plant was not in Huaxia. She had always thought that the Qi Yuan dynasty and Huaxia just had a different timeline and should still be in the same land. After all, they had a lot of similar history. But how did this little thing appear? It seemed that no one had the ability to cross the two continents. Moreover, there was a small pile of other varieties of succulents next to it. They were small and delicate and looked very cute. It didn't seem like someone would travel thousands of miles to get these. Luo Peishan followed up. "Girl, what's so special about this little thing?" "Nothing. Granddaughter just suddenly had some ideas." "Grandpa, granddaughter will make another small bonsai for you to see. What do you think?" The bonsai here had reached a certain scale, but they were still relatively conservative. Generally, they were single plants, neither very big nor very small, and the style was relatively simple. Jingwan believed that as long as they were given some ideas, they would be able to create a variety of bonsai. Jingwan never doubted their creativity and imagination. Luo Peishan's interest was piqued, and so was the fifth Taiching. Perhaps it was because the fifth Taiching often came here, but the stall owner recognized him and naturally did not dare to neglect him. "What do you need, miss?" Jingwan described her requirements one by one. She replaced the things that she could not find at the moment, so she quickly found what she wanted. It was a relatively short but relatively large flower pot. Seeing that Jingwan was about to get the sand and soil by herself, Nanny Gong, who had been quietly following her, suddenly came forward to stop her. "Miss, please tell me what you want. I will do it, so that you don't hurt your hands." Jingwan looked at her hands. Well, it was not dirty before. A well-bred girl like her had to be pampered everywhere. How could the stall owner be so blind? "How can I let Miss do it?" "Miss, please tell me what to do. I will do it." Jingwan opened her mouth, and the stall owner asked another shop assistant to do it. As long as they were good at it, it was actually very simple. But because it was the first time, they were a little clumsy. Jingwan was quite helpless, but she knew that not only Nanny Gong, even her grandfather would not allow her to do it. When it was time to plant the small succulents, Jingwan was unwilling to continue. Her mouth was dry from talking, but she might not be able to achieve the effect she wanted. She waved her hand. "It will be fine after washing it in a while. It won't touch much sand and stone." Jingwan worked quickly. The big and small succulents were uneven. Finally, she added 2 stones and even bitterwood roots. She clapped her hands and was done. Amazing. The so-called turning something rotten into something magical is nothing more than this. Diwu Taiching praised. This small bonsai might not be their favorite, but it was exquisite and had a different kind of beauty. His granddaughter liked things like this. The onlookers couldn't help but praise, and the stall owner was the most excited because he saw an infinite business opportunity in it. He got these things from the north because they didn't have them here. Unfortunately, no one cared about them. He wanted to wait for 2 days and throw them away. Who would have thought that things would take a turn? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652916. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 37. Jingwan nodded. In her opinion, this miniature bonsai was rather crude. She could make a good one when she went back. She asked the stall owner a few more things. Next time, bring some back and send them to the Luo residence. In addition, you can also look for other. Jingwan told him about the cactus-type succulents. If you see them, bring them back together. I want them all. If there are a lot of them, you can also sell them yourself. This small bonsai is very simple. You can understand it at a glance, right? Jingwan smiled. The stall owner was quite embarrassed to be seen through by a girl from the boudoir. What the stall owner didn't know was that this kind of inconspicuous little thing would quickly become popular in the inner courtyard of the capital. He had only eaten it 2 or 3 times before the big shots in the industry came to his door. Fortunately, he made a lot of money from it. As for the inconspicuous little succulents, they went from being worthless to having a high net worth. Jingwan didn't care much about these things. She washed her hands with cold water. Usually, she washed her hands with warm water at all times. This made Nurse Gong quite concerned. Qing Zhu also muttered a few words. Jingwan was helpless. Old man Luo, you have such a granddaughter. Why haven't I heard you mention it? When they were at home, their children and grandchildren would naturally do everything possible to be filial. It was inevitable that they would cater to their preferences. If they really met a junior who was intelligent in this aspect, no matter what the original purpose was, they would definitely be happy. Then, it was normal to pull her out from time to show off to others. This girl from the Luo family was not as simple as being intelligent, but they had never heard old man Luo mention it. Seeing that her grandfather seemed to be prepared to be cold to the end, Jingwan opened her mouth and said, "My daughter has been living with grandmother in Qian Prefecture. A few days ago, I came to the capital with grandmother." No wonder. Diwu Taiching stroked his beard and nodded. His thoughts changed. "Girl, do you know the few pots of flowers your grandfather mentioned?" Jingwan looked at Luo Peishan and found it quite funny. My daughter raised them when she was in Qian Prefecture. This time, she brought them to the capital. Diwu Taiching's beard broke several times in succession. If this continued, his beard would fall off sooner or later. His heart ached when he saw it, but he continued to touch it and drop it from time to time. He looked at Luo Peishan with hidden bitterness in his eyes. "Lord Luo, you are full of confidence now." Luo Peishan puffed out his chest. That's right, he was very confident now. "My third daughter also has a one-of-a-kind tricolored peony." Seeing Diwu Taiching continue to cut off his beard, he felt especially relieved. Jingwan really wanted to say, "Grandfather, take it easy. What's the big deal about being unique? If you know how it was done, you really don't care." However, looking at Luo Peishan's childish behavior, Jingwan chose to keep her mouth shut. "Greetings to the 2 lords. This student has taken the liberty to disturb you." Sun Yilin, who had turned around when he heard their conversation, paused for a moment before he finally stepped forward. He bowed to Jingwan beside him. Jingwan squatted down to return the greeting. "Son of the Sun family, are you not at His Majesty's side today?" Luo Peishan asked. It was just a simple inquiry. There was no other meaning. Among these juniors, Sun Yilin was the one they liked the most, but also the one they hated the most. The 2 reasons were naturally because of flowers and trees. Duke Dingwa's mansion had great power and could always get some famous things that they couldn't get. However, this brat was stingy, and refused to exchange the real rare treasures with them. This student is just a pawn and insignificant. His Majesty is very kind, so I don't need to accompany him every day. Even if he was put in an important position, he had to do it step by step. His starting point was much higher than others, so he wasn't in a hurry. "You came alone?" Diwu Taiching said, as if he was joking. Everyone in the capital knew that the fifth son of Duke Dingwa's mansion was almost infatuated with flowers. Therefore, he liked to go to the flower market from time to time. Those ladies who admired him naturally flocked to try to have a chance encounter. They might be able to say that they had a common interest. If they could be connected by fate because of this, it couldn't be better. It was no wonder that when Li Ruyu heard that Sun Yilin talked to Jingwan because of flowers in Duke Dingwa's mansion, her reaction was so big. Because they all knew that the possibility of Sun Yilin liking a girl because of flowers and trees was very high. Although there had been countless girls who had sent flowers and trees to him through other people's hands, the result was nothing definite. Li Ruyu was still vigilant at all times. Sun Yilin knew his situation, but he had long been accustomed to it. Today, I mainly came out to accompany my sister for a walk. Sun Yijia's marriage was a hot topic. In addition, her marriage was related to the situation of the imperial court. Therefore, it was not surprising that Luo Peishan and the others also knew about it. Because it happened to be at the corner of two streets, the Sun siblings actually came from another street. Obviously, Sun Yijia most likely went to change clothes at this time. Sure enough, not long after, Sun Yijia came out of the brothel next to them. After Sun Yijia greeted the two elders, she greeted Jingwan. She didn't say anything, but her gaze paused on Jingwan's face. Jingwan returned a smile. However, Jingwan probably didn't know that Sun Yijia still had an impression of her. This impression was quite deep. This impression didn't come from the person Li Ruyu was looking for trouble with. It came from the time when they parted. The situation at that time was quite special. Even if it was a hurried glance, it was always easier to remember. Naturally, the number of people going to the flower market together increased. Sun Yilin was itching for the tricolored peony, but now wasn't the time to ask. He could only suppress his thoughts and chat with the two elders about their mutual love. Jingwan and Sun Yijia walked together. They didn't talk much, mainly because Sun Yijia wasn't in a good mood. It was obvious that her family was only concerned about how much benefit she could bring to the Empress and King Kong after her marriage. They never considered whether she would be happy or not. Even if she had already accepted her fate, she would still be sad. Compared to the previous street, this street was much more orderly. It also looked more classy. From the stalls, there were shops. There were even 2-story and 3-story buildings everywhere. "Miss Sun, look at those flowers. Aren't they beautiful? Look at those plants. Don't they look lively?" Jingwan and the others suddenly said to Sun Yijia as they followed the elders into a flower shop with all kinds of flowers. Sun Yijia didn't know what she meant, but she still looked in the direction she was pointing. It didn't seem different from what she usually saw. Did you know that they grew in the wild in the beginning? When they were dug up, no one knew if they were willing or not. They also didn't know what they would be facing. If they were like flowers that could think like humans, their first reaction might be fear and uneasiness because they were worried that they would be used as firewood and burned. But in reality, that wasn't the case. They received better and more meticulous care. They grew prettier and were loved by the world. However, the process of going from the wild to domesticated is actually not that beautiful. The most painful thing is the change of environment. The ones in front of us all tried their best to change and adapt. As for those that couldn't adapt, they withered and withered long ago. Jingwan's voice was gentle and unhurried. How could Sun Yijia not understand what Jingwan meant? When one's fate was controlled by others, why should one be worried about walking down a dead end? It wasn't as if one didn't have a choice at all. Try your best to adapt and live a good life, or be disheartened and let things slide. If she chose the former, she might find that she was better than before. Even if she couldn't, she was a girl from Ding, General Manor. It was not impossible for her to enjoy herself. If she chose the latter, even if others wanted to, they would give up because of her indifference. They would become dim, decline, and disappear silently. Sun Ijia's tears rolled down her cheeks like a broken string of beads. No one in the family had ever told her these things. Other than her brother, who was closest to her, no one could tell what she was thinking. However, her brother couldn't comfort her. She thought that she didn't need anything and just lived day by day. In fact, that wasn't the case. She had been wandering in the dark, lost. She needed someone to show her the way, but this person came so suddenly and unexpectedly. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652917. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Mobile Edition. Chapter 38. Jingwan wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said with a smile, "Girls are made of water. Don't cry too much. Otherwise, you'll be like those flowers. Without water, they won't be beautiful anymore. It's okay to cry once in a while, but you have to find the right person to cry to. You have to cry to the person who cares for you." She winked as she spoke. Sun Ijia smiled through her tears and quickly wiped away her tears. Because she didn't put on any makeup, she didn't have to worry about her makeup being smudged. Her eyes wouldn't turn red in such a short time. Sun Ijia quickly returned to normal, but compared to before, she looked much more energetic. The whole process actually only took a short time. Even if others noticed, they would only take a few glances at most. Sun Yilin heaved a huge sigh of relief. He was also very happy. Diwu Taiching approached Luo Peishan. "It's a pity that your granddaughter didn't give birth to a boy." This old man also felt that it was a pity before. "However, I don't feel that it's a pity anymore. She's quite good the way she is now." Sun Ijia suddenly became close to Jingwan. She changed from the unfamiliar Miss Luo to Little Sister Wan. She smiled intimately. It was probably because Jingwan saw through her thoughts and thought that Jingwan and she actually had similar temperaments. However, Jingwan was open-minded and had a candid nature that she didn't reveal. She was much better than Sun Ijia, who was always sad and sad. Although Sun Ijia called Jingwan Little Sister Wan, she actually treated Jingwan as her older sister. Because Jingwan was able to comfort her, it formed a kind of dependence that Sun Ijia herself didn't even notice. She also said everything to Jingwan. She didn't have the slightest bit of the arrogance of a cold and aloof flower. Because the change was too fast, Jingwan actually felt a little uncomfortable for a moment. However, seeing Sun Ijia like this was better than her gradually sinking into numbness. During the conversation, Sun Ijia discovered that Jingwan actually knew more about flowers than her fifth brother. In her opinion, it was simply unbelievable. "Little Sister Wan, you're amazing. I thought that no one could compare to my fifth brother in this aspect, not even those old adults. I didn't expect you to be even better. It's true that there's always someone better than you. Big Sister Jia, you flatter me." "All right," Sun Ijia forced her to call her that. "It's just that I've read a lot of related books and planted a lot of plants myself. Naturally, I know all this. I've also learned a lot from my fifth brother, but he always despises me for being clumsy and says that I'm ruining his things. It's clearly his fault for not teaching me well." Sun Ijia was right beside him. As his younger sister, was it really okay for her to speak ill of him so openly? Sun Ijia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know that there was a saying, even when lying down, you still get shot. Luo Peishan originally thought that he wouldn't be able to harvest anything today. However, when they were resting in the tea house, he looked at the small basket that Qingju was carrying. He lifted the handkerchief on top and was stunned to see a few branches and an orchid that had been determined to die. Jingwan naturally noticed his actions. She smiled meaningfully and didn't say anything. Luo Peishan also seemed to understand. He acted as if nothing had happened, but in reality, he didn't understand anything. Jingwan didn't know that the man who had been secretly watching her was also in a private room on the 3rd floor. Li Hongyuan was upstairs just now. He saw Jingwan through the slightly open window. This time, he didn't deliberately come to see Jingwan. It was purely a coincidence. He was here on business. However, he was rather surprised to see Jingwan and Sun Yijia holding hands and looking very intimate. There should be something that he didn't know. However, things had changed from the beginning. In that case, Jingwan only had one more friend. This person's character was not bad, so there was nothing to be surprised about. Moreover, this was beneficial to his original plan. Li Honyuan indeed wouldn't have thought that in his previous life, when Princess Kang passed away due to illness, Sun Yijia, as Prince Kang's fiancée, felt deeply guilty. She silently fasted and prayed for Princess Kang at home for 49 days. She didn't step out of Duke Dinghua's half a step. Naturally, today's chance meeting with Jingwan in the flower market wouldn't have happened. Moreover, Jingwan wouldn't have comforted her. So how could they become friends? Similarly, in his previous life, Jingwan didn't have any friendship with anyone in Duke Dinghua's Fu. If she had a good relationship with Sun Yijia, Li Ruyu wouldn't have been able to plot against Jingwan so easily in Duke Dinghua's Fu. In this life, Li Ruyu wouldn't be able to plot against Jingwan. Even if she got too close to Jingwan, she would be strangled. Master, it's starting over there. An E quietly appeared and reported respectfully. If Wan Wan and the others go over there to join in the fun, protect her as the first priority. He paused. Luo Peishan will do the same. Yes. Jingwan and the others didn't sit for long before they heard that in the 100 Flowers building not far away, someone was shamelessly boasting that they were going to select the most popular flower. The two old officials naturally didn't care. The famous flower that could become the most popular flower must be in their hands. They wouldn't take out their treasures for others to select. What was the difference between that and playing to the gallery? The people who came here were all lovers of flowers and plants. At first, most of them naturally snorted disdainfully. However, when they heard that there was a black peony that was as black as ink and as fine as silk, everyone, including Jingwan and the others, had a strange expression on their faces. Black peony? Jingwan whispered softly. She wasn't sure if it was really as black as ink and had a very beautiful luster like the previous orchid. The black peonies in her previous life were only very dark in color. Most of them were purplish red. Could it be that she would see a species that she had never seen before today? Grandfather, let's go take a look. Since his granddaughter said so, Luo Shangshu reluctantly agreed. Jingwan found it funny. She didn't know why they were so awkward. If they wanted to see, they could go and see. It was that simple. By the time Jingwan and the others arrived, there were already many people gathered in the 100 Flowers building, both inside and outside. If it weren't for Luo Peishan and the 5th Taiching's high positions and the special identities of Sun Yilin and his sister, they really wouldn't have been able to enter. Identity and status could not only be used as entrance tickets, but also more substantial benefits. For example, right now, the building was originally densely packed with people, but their group was able to get a private room. Drinking small cups of tea, the environment was elegant enough, and they had a panoramic view of the situation below. After asking the servants in the private room, they found out that the so-called selection of the courtesan belle was actually a competition between two parties. Moreover, it was the two princes, the 3rd Prince Rui Prince and the 4th Prince Gong Prince's brother-in-law, the real brother-in-law, and their respective Wang Fei's younger brother. This was interesting. The Gong Prince's biological mother was only a concubine, but she had Qin Shu Fei behind her. Qin Shu Fei had no children, but the Qin family behind her was the newly established Marquis of Champion's Mansion. Her brother was the head of the left governor's mansion, holding military power. Although the 4th prince wasn't officially raised by Qin Shu Fei, he basically grew up in Qin Shu Fei's Sweet Dew Palace. The Gong Prince's Wang Fei also came from the Marquis of Champion's Mansion and was the left governor's daughter. This seemed to be just a competition between two people, But in fact, it involved the two princes or the two imperial concubines in the palace, or even a competition between the two forces. At least, that was what Luo Peishan and Diwu Taiqing thought. Only Li Hongyuan sneered in his heart. Most people in the court thought that the empress and imperial concubine Su were rivals. But in fact, the empress was weaker. After all, the right governor was a member of imperial concubine Su's maternal uncle's family, and also held military power. Although Duke Ding's mansion had monstrous power, they didn't have military power. Sometimes, military power was the deciding factor. However, no one knew that the left governor's true allegiance was to the first prince, Kang Wang. The empress didn't look as strong as imperial concubine Su, but that woman shouldn't be underestimated. Qin Shufei was actually a sensible person. She knew her brother's decision. In the harem, she seemed to be fighting, but in fact, she didn't do anything. Even the so-called support for the fourth prince, the Gong Prince, was just a show for others to see. She was a pitiful chess piece who thought she had the ability to fight for the throne, but in fact, she didn't have anything. Therefore, Qin Shufei was relatively low-key in the harem, and she wasn't as favored as imperial concubine Su. However, the empress and imperial concubine Su didn't dare to provoke her easily. The empress knew that she was on their side, and imperial concubine Su was afraid of her brother, the left governor. However, these were all situations where Li Hongyuan didn't intervene. In his previous life, he was able to become the final winner. Part of the reason was that the left governor rebelled against the empress's faction and sided with him. In this life, the left governor had long been in his hands. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652918. HTML. Click here to report an error. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition. Chapter 39. Following such an unpredictable master was simply like treading on thin ice. It could not be more tiring, but they did not dare to have any rebellious thoughts. If you could not be used by him, you would probably be killed directly. But if you submitted to him and had a rebellious heart, then your life would be worse than death, and the people behind you would also not have a good end. As for hiding it from him, you can try to see if you have the ability to fool his heavenly eyes. That's right, in this Qin's opinion, Jin Qinhuang has the ability to reach the heavens. Jingwan was not interested in the bustle below, as well as the people on both sides attacking each other. She only wanted to know if she could really see the treasure that she had never seen before. The process of waiting was rather boring. Wan Mimi cares so much about that black peony. Sun Yijia actually did not understand their attachment to those flowers and trees. Just like people who like jewels and jade, if they suddenly hear that there is a beautiful jewel that they have never seen before, it is inevitable that their heart will itch. Even if they can't take it for themselves, they still want to feast their eyes on it. If it is the same as expected, they will probably be satisfied and gratified. If there is a difference, they will probably be disappointed. And before they see it, they will be expectant, anxious, perturbed, and so on. In short, they really care about it. Sun Yijia nodded, more or less understanding this feeling. Most people would be like this when faced with something they like. She herself had also experienced it before. The only difference was that the intensity of that feeling was different. It seems that the stupid things that fifth brother did before can be pardoned. I will not make fun of him in the future. Sun Yilin was once again innocently implicated. Jingwan smiled but did not say anything. When she heard the shouts below, come out, she immediately became spirited. She got up and turned her head to look. The other people's reactions were similar to hers. Two brocade-clothed men, looking like they were brought up. Their faces were white and tender. Their expressions were arrogant. They did not walk properly, with some frivolity. One person was shaking a jade folding fan. Looking at the face of the fan, It should be a work of a famous master. The other person was playing with a rare amethyst bracelet. When they saw each other, they raised their heads and used their nostrils to face each other. Behind them, there were several manservants, carrying large wooden chests that were tightly covered. They walked from both sides to the round stage in the middle that was decorated with flowers. It was usually used for singing and dancing performances. The two of them seemed to be sworn enemies on a daily basis. Once again, they bickered with each other, criticizing each other from head to toe. Jingwan had a headache because of their quarrel. She didn't know why she got angry. She picked up the teacup next to her and threw it down. With a clang, it became quiet. The onlookers also quieted down. Almost simultaneously, they all looked in the direction where the teacup was thrown. Jingwan also knew that she had done something stupid because she was anxious. Because there was something blocking her, it was too late for her to retreat immediately. She was already prepared to be watched and pointed at. Unexpectedly, a black shadow flashed in front of her, and she was completely blocked. Looking at the back of the figure that was close to her, Jingwan slightly exhaled and slowly moved to the side. Jingwan smiled embarrassedly at the meaningful gazes of the others. Luo Peishan pointed at her from afar. Grandfather really thought you were a steady person. Who would have thought that there would be times when you would be willful? If it wasn't for this brat's quick reaction, what would you be doing now? Granddaughter won't comment on things that didn't happen. Jingwan said shamelessly. Yes, thank you for your grandmother's teachings. Everyone was amused by her shameless behavior. It's okay. Little girl, it's understandable for you to be impulsive occasionally, Diwu Taiching said. Sun Yilin also turned around and smiled. He didn't care about the people below at all. As for the two main characters below, they raised their heads and wanted to curse. But when they saw Sun Yilin, they shut their mouths embarrassedly. Sun Yilin was a young master like them. Their age was about the same. Sun Yilin was born noble, and they were also born noble. However, when facing Sun Yilin, they were inferior. Moreover, he was the one who was ostracized. There was no other reason other than that Sun Yilin was the other family's child that all their elders talked about. He was the most hated one. When going against him, they were always the ones in the wrong. How could young Master Sun do such a thing? It couldn't be worse. You two, don't keep me in suspense. Quickly open it and let everyone have a look. Also, let this humble one see. Sun Yilin finally looked them in the eye. He was truly a noble young master, making the two below look useless. Although they really didn't want to give him any face, if they really did that, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Those sisters who admired this brat were simply unreasonable. Even if they were enemies, they would still be hot-headed. Perhaps one of them was in the brothel right now. Qin Tianming's youngest son. In terms of family background, he was better than the younger brother of Princess Rue, Lady Lu. After all, although the person with the highest position in the Lu family was an inner cabinet elder, he was the last of the 4 cabinet elders and had no title. At this time, young Master Qin didn't hold back. I'll go first. Before young Master Lu could speak, he directly asked someone to open the wooden box. He said it lightly, but the person who opened it wasn't. If he wasn't careful and damaged the treasure inside, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to compensate. Perhaps young Master Lu was confident in his own flower. Even when he heard that it was an ink peony, he didn't care. He looked quite leisurely, or perhaps he was waiting for his famous flower to amaze everyone. The ink peony, which was widely discussed, finally appeared. It was a flower that only reached the height of a person's chest. Indeed, there were a few sparse ink peonies, but the flower shape wasn't big and the color was somewhat dark. Perhaps the rumors were too exaggerated and didn't reach the expected height. Although people were surprised that such a species really existed, in fact, they didn't have an exaggerated reaction. No matter how rare it was, its appearance wasn't good enough to attract people's attention. Young Master Qin was so angry that his face turned red. He didn't expect that the treasure that he thought he was sure to win was not valued by others. He didn't even know that he had bragged too much. If the crowd didn't know at the beginning and it suddenly appeared, it would definitely shock some people. In anger, he kicked the person beside him. Young Master Lu sneered. "You dare to call yourself a top flower? Take a good look." Perhaps because they were disappointed with the ink peony, they were looking forward to young Master Qin's flower. They were all guessing what it would be. Looking at young Master Lu's expression, perhaps it was the real treasure. When the wooden box was opened, everyone was really shocked. It was also a peony, but the difference was that this peony was not only in good condition, but also blooming red, pink, and white flowers. They were evenly and scattered, and each flower was unusually delicate. It was no worse than the 4 famous peonies. This was a real rare treasure. Almost everyone in the field showed an infatuated look. On the contrary, Jingwan's expression was cold and even indifferent. She didn't care about the peony, but when her eyes fell on the ink peony, they showed gentleness. "Sister Wan, you don't like the tricolored peony?" Sunny Jia didn't particularly like flowers and trees, but she loved them very much. Sister Wan's reaction was wrong. Didn't she see that her 5th brother's eyes were glued to the tricolored peony? Hearing this, the others came back to their senses. When they saw Jingwan's expression, they all felt that something was wrong. Luo Peishan thought about his granddaughter's pot of multicolored peonies. It seemed to be red, white, and pink. Was it because she thought that her peony was unique, but when she saw another one, she was unhappy? Or was it because his peony was not as good as this one? However, Luo Peishan didn't think his granddaughter was such a narrow-minded person. Sun Yilin also thought of a similar problem. Perhaps because he liked Jingwan from the beginning, he didn't think she was narrow-minded. Instead, he wanted to comfort her. Jingwan looked up and saw their different expressions. She couldn't help but laugh. "I just feel that it's a pity that such a good white peony was ruined by them." Luo Peishan's expression became serious. He said, "Girl, what do you mean? White peony. Then what's with the pink and red peony?" Sun Yilin frowned slightly. He seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became a little ugly. "It was dyed. But I don't know who did it. It really looks like it. Also, it's not the peak of the peony season yet. It's already a good trick to be able to bloom so beautifully. Unfortunately, I don't think it will last long." The feeling of being fooled and deceived arose spontaneously. No one doubted Jingwan's words. Other than believing in her character, Luo Peishan also trusted her judgment. Besides, it was actually quite easy to verify. No matter how realistic the dye was, it was still fake. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652919. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 40. Coincidentally, the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Ruan Ruizong, the Minister of Rights, Luo Peishan, and the Minister of Supreme Court, the 5th Taiqing, all belonged to the neutral faction. Among the neutral members, the 3 of them did not have the highest status, but their official positions were the highest. Because of this, among the officials who liked flowers and trees, the 3 of them were the closest. To be able to stand alone in the cruel struggle for the throne was a problem in itself. Luo Peishan not only had means, but also his position and other factors. It seemed that he was just struggling on the edge of a quagmire. Perhaps he would be forced to sink into it soon. Diwu Taiqing looked like a sissy, but he was really a hard bone to chew. He was absolutely a pure official who was only loyal to the emperor. He was really smelly and stubborn when it came to official affairs. He did not give face to anyone. Therefore, if there was a big case, it would be best if the Ministry of Justice could handle it. It should not be handed over to him. However, such a person was not the sharpest knife in the emperor's hand. Because he was fair, even if the emperor wanted to use him to get rid of some people, it would not work if there was no factual evidence. As for Prime Minister Juan Ruizong, he really had his own ability. He could get benefits from both sides, but he was not the kind of person who was a peacemaker. He dealt with things smoothly, but he was not soft. Even Li Hongyuan was convinced of his ability. Such a good thing. Let's give it to Pavilion Elder Ruan. Let's not fight for it. Diwu Taiching said with a smile. Luo Peishan also smiled and agreed. Because it was fake, it was likely that this pot of peony would not be seen in the future. When it was close, it was easy for experts to tell whether it was real or fake. Therefore, it was only used as bait to attract fish. As long as the fish came close, it would make others think that the fish had chosen a direction. Ruan Ruizong would not let some people get what they wanted, but he had to do something for this tricolored peony. He knew that it was fake, but he did not tell him. Pavilion Elder Ruan's joke was too rare. He did not give Prince Rue any benefits, but wanted to get the peony. Prince Rue was tired of dealing with it. It was also good fun. Fake. In the private room next door, Li Hongyuan, who entered through a secret door, murmured in a low voice. Indeed, only Wan can raise such a rare and peerless item. In his previous life, a pot of tricolored peony had caused a sensation. Li Hongyuan also knew the purpose of Li Hongming, Lord Rue. He really wanted to catch Luo Peishan, but Luo Peishan remained indifferent from the beginning to the end. Now that he thought about it, it should also be on this day in his previous life. Wan saw the problem, so naturally, Luo Peishan did not take action, and so did the 5th Grand Minister. However, Sun Yilin had taken action. Everyone thought that he did not get what he wanted, because he was on the Empress's side and had a hostile relationship with Lord Rue. Thinking about it, Sun Yilin was not here today in his previous life, so he did not know the truth. Ruan Ruizong and Li Hongming tangled for a while, but the result was unknown, because the appearance of another pot of tricolored peony covered up this matter. After all, many people had personally touched the peony that Wan took out. According to Li Hongming's character, he should have kept a close eye on Wan. However, perhaps before he could do anything, Wan had already been schemed against by Li Ruyu. Thinking about it this way, Wan's fate was really full of misfortune. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Without him, it would be impossible. After coming to this conclusion, Li Hongyuan naturally made some arrangements or changes to the layout of the plan. Grandfather, buy that pot of black peony. Bang! Before Jingwan could finish her words, Mr. Qin kicked the black peony over. The pot was smashed, the soil scattered, and the peony fell to the ground, dropping many leaves and petals. Jingwan's heart ached. She turned around and seemed to want to go downstairs. Girl, don't worry. Looking at its appearance, other than you, there aren't many people who want it. When the matter is over, it won't be difficult to get it back. Hearing this, Jingwan could only calm her mind. Li Hongyuan saw her expression from the dark hole, and his face sank. Have Qin Tianming come see Ben Wang tonight? Yes. An ear replied. If the son doesn't teach, the father is to blame. This was a typical example. However, Qin Tianming was even more miserable. At least if it was another person, he wouldn't be so angry that he would suffer. When facing the future Wang Fei, Master's heart was smaller than the tip of a needle. That flower wasn't Miss Luo's to begin with. He only showed that he wanted it. His heart ached when he saw the flower suffer, but this person looked like he wanted to cut her into 8 pieces. As for those who really made a move against Miss Luo, Ani didn't dare imagine what their future would be like. In another part of the same street, 3 groups of people were staging a battle called the Mantis Stalks the Cicada, unaware of the aureole behind. Prince Rue inadvertently learned that in this flower market, the Gong Prince had hidden a stronghold. Inside, there seemed to be some shameful things. From the beginning, Prince Kong knew about this stronghold and the Gong Prince's movements like the back of his hand. He didn't uproot it because he wanted to get more information. Who wouldn't like something that didn't require him to expend effort and also had many benefits? When Prince Rue arranged for today's flower battle, Prince Kong was aware of it and naturally beat him at his own game. Prince Rui's people were almost completely annihilating the Gong Prince's people. While they were rummaging through the Gong Prince's people, a group of black-clothed people suddenly attacked. Although Prince Rui had already made arrangements, he still suffered some losses. In addition, Prince Kong sent more people. In a flash, Prince Rui's people fell into a dangerous situation. One of them desperately escaped under the cover of the others. Seeing that the Oriole was about to peck the mantis to death, a black hand quietly appeared. These people were well organized, skilled in martial arts, and ruthless. Soon everyone was cleaned up, and the people who entered the building quickly came out. Both sides nodded to each other. Although the left Governor Qin Tianming submitted to Prince Kong, the champion Marquis household behind him still supported the Gong Prince. Therefore, although the Gong Prince was just a pitiful worm, he still had some useful things in his hands. A fire was quickly retreating. Almost at the same time, the most densely populated by Hualu and several other places were also on fire. The fire was too big, burning too fiercely. Bai Hualu was instantly, incomparably chaotic. Even the boudoirs desperately tried to squeeze out. One person carelessly fell to the ground, and the people behind rushed over. Screams, cries for help, screams. Jingwan was also a little frightened by this sudden disaster, but she knew that at this time she needed to be calm. She absolutely couldn't panic. Just as she was about to say something, her mouth and nose were covered by a wet handkerchief. Miss, quickly leave. Grandfather, Miss, don't worry. There's someone by Master's side. Gong Mama led Jingwan outside. The others followed closely behind her. However, the wooden staircase leading downstairs was blocked by the people coming down from upstairs. This kind of pushing and shoving was the most dangerous. Moreover, Jingwan realized that other than Granny Gong, the others had disappeared. It was obvious that they had been separated. Jingwan tightly held onto Gong Mama. Although she was extremely worried, she also knew that now wasn't the time to turn back and look for people. In the chaos, her head seemed to have been accidentally hit by someone, and in a flash, she felt a little dizzy. Before Jingwan lost consciousness, she seemed to feel her body leave the ground and rise into the air. She wanted to struggle, but was ruthlessly pulled into the darkness. Her own miss was kidnapped in her own hands. How could she? But in a flash, Gong Mama thought of something, but she didn't stop. She held onto the railing and jumped down after the person in black in front of her. She was agile and vigorous, completely unlike a woman in her 40s. Then, she chased after the person and left through the back door. The backyard of 100 Flowers Tower was a 3-sectioned house. It wasn't very big, but it wasn't small either. Although it wasn't as chaotic as the front, it was still smoky and not much better. Gong Mama couldn't see the person who took Jingwan away, but she didn't stop walking. She walked straight in a certain direction. After leaving the vicinity of 100 Flowers Tower, Gong Mama sniffed carefully. Then, she found the horse carriage 2 lanes away. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652920. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition website, mbicken.com. Chapter 41. Annie looked at that familiar yet unfamiliar face. Sure enough, it was a good method. She only changed her face a bit and it looked like another person. But as long as she wanted to, she could use that completely different face to let people who were familiar with her original appearance recognize her at a glance. As expected of the female protector, you found me so quickly. Call me Mama Gong. She was too lazy to pay attention to an E. The incense used by the young lady. Although it was made by the young lady in the beginning, it was all made by her. She couldn't be more familiar with it. With her sensitive nose, how could she not smell it? If she still couldn't find it, how incompetent would she be? She looked at the carriage and frowned. Wangya, the young lady's reputation is very important. Please think more about the young lady. And E was a bit displeased. Female protector, that is the master. How can you be so rude? Call me Mama Gong. 2 years ago, when I was sent to Chien Manor, my master changed. That is the Luo family's third young lady, the only one. And he thought of his master and closed his mouth. Li Honyuan half leaned in the carriage, holding the unconscious Jingwan in his arms. As if he was suffering from skin hunger, his fingers kept moving around her face and neck. The smooth and delicate touch seemed to make his whole body tremble. He had the impulse to rub Jingwan into his bones and blood, but when he heard Jingwan groan because of the discomfort, he subconsciously loosened his grip. Lowering his head, his lips landed on Jingwan's forehead. Gently, gently, her eyes, the bridge of her nose, the tip of her nose, her cheeks, her earlobes, and the side of her neck. His lips lingered on and finally landed on her alluring pink lips. He licked them, but did not dare to go deeper, because he knew that once he did, he might lose control. For so many years, he was like an ascetic monk who didn't touch women. He was very clear that once he opened a mouth, it would be like a flood breaking through a dam. When he came back to this day, 12 years had passed. He finally held her in his arms. Calculating the time, when he just came back, Wan seemed to be only 2 years old. What a pity, Qi and Manor was too far from the capital. Moreover, he was trapped in the palace and couldn't see the little Wan. Even if he sent someone to her side, he had to wait for a full 6 years until he left the palace at the age of 16. However, if he continued to raise Wan by his side, when she grew up, she probably wouldn't be the Wan he wanted. This was because he knew best that the same person in different places and taught by different people could create two completely different people. It was also because of this point that during the 10 years that Wan was in Qi and Manor, especially the years after she grew up, other than secretly giving her a little help, he didn't change her life. Even if he sent Nurse Gong, other than protecting her and taking care of her body, she only taught her some common rules and etiquette. Other than that, she didn't do anything else. He was afraid that Wan would no longer be the person in his memories. Fortunately, she was still her. As long as he could ensure this, he would completely change her life in the future. Their lips pressed together for a long time. Li Honyuan let out a low sigh. Little vinegar jar. Do you know how much this prince endured for you? In the future, you have to make it up to this prince. His palm seemed to unconsciously fall on Jingwan's chest. His peerless face was serious, but his hand was like an old hooligan, as if he wasn't satisfied with the size. As expected, compared to a few years later, it's still too small now. However, a green fruit should have a different taste. He licked his lips, as if he was reminiscing about something. That dark gaze seemed to contain a madness that could devour everything, but also an endless tenderness and affection. His low and seductive voice made the two people outside twitch. They hated how their hearing was so good. This man was indeed abnormal. It was fine if he was crazy, but how could a grown man like him be so frivolous towards a young girl? Did he still have any shame? Another 2 men in black appeared one after another. One of them was holding a broken black peony. However, when they saw this scene, they stopped and didn't approach. Nurse Gong was a little anxious. If they didn't go back, the people on the other side would be anxious. Moreover, whether or not there was an accident, a young girl missing for a long time would always attract gossip. Your Highness, how is it? Li Honyuan asked when Nurse Gong was about to speak. Nurse Gong breathed a sigh of relief and retreated to the side. She didn't need to listen to things that had nothing to do with her. Even if she occasionally heard 1 or 2 words, she would turn around and forget them. The 2 men in black quickly stepped forward, replying to Master, everything has been done. We also got the things from Bai Hua Lu, the master behind. Bai Hua Lu was Li Hongming. This time, he really tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, suffering heavy losses. As for Prince Kong and the Gong Prince, they naturally didn't fare much better. In this drama, Li Hongyuan became the hunter who wiped out the first three. Li Hongyuan made a sound that was almost inaudible. After a while, he came out of the carriage with Jingwan in his arms. The other three men quickly lowered their heads. Nurse Gong stepped forward, almost snatching, and carried Jingwan over. She carefully examined Jingwan's collar and other places. She didn't find any marks, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Whether it was her words or His Highness restrained himself, she couldn't stop this man. She could only do her best to protect the young girl. Li Hongyuan's face darkened. This prince is not a ferocious beast. Nurse Gong glanced at him, as if to say, "You're more terrible than a scourge." Li Hongyuan's face darkened even more. However, Nurse Gong wasn't afraid of him, not only because she grasped his weakness, but also because she wasn't afraid of him. It could be said that Nurse Gong watched Li Hongyuan grow up. This servant will withdraw. As for the black peony, according to His Highness's character, he would find a way to send it to the young girl. Li Hongyuan watched as Granny Gong disappeared with Jingwan. His entire body was filled with a terrifying aura. The three secret guards wished they could disappear immediately. They were already unpredictable and ruthless. In addition, they were not satisfied with their desires. How could they live? Would they really have to wait until His Highness married into the prince's family? Luo Peishan and the others spent some time together. They all had different degrees of injuries, but fortunately, they weren't serious, and there were no casualties. Where's Wan Wan? Jingwan's maidservant, Qingzhu, was there, but she and Granny Gong were nowhere to be seen. Luo Peishan's face sank. The fire in 100 Flowers Tower could not be extinguished at all. If they waited for the fire to go out, they would have been burned to ashes. Qingzhu's body went soft as if she had lost her soul. Miss. She wanted to go back to Baihua Tower. Enough. Your miss is fine. Why are you crying? Luo Peishan showed the power of his high position for many years. Go and find her. Maybe she came from somewhere else. He was still rational. He didn't let people go into the fire. Without any protection, they would definitely die. How could they save Jingwan? Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia also sent people out. They didn't believe that Jingwan was gone. No one knew that Sun Yilin's clenched hands were shaking and his heart was in a panic. Anyway, from the first time he saw that girl, she was different to him. He patted his sister, who was also frightened. Stay with the two Darren and don't walk around. I'll go and find her. Sun Yijia nodded. Her hands and feet were a little cold. She was born in a noble family and had almost no real friends. Now she finally met a girl who was compatible with her. She looked no different from ordinary girls, but sometimes she was different. She lived with determination, free and easy. Sun Yijia had to admit that she yearned for her. Sun Yijia prayed in her heart, hoping that she would be safe. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652921. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 42. When the two of them learned that the Minister of Rights and the Supreme Court Chancellor were also present, they hurried over to greet them. Luo Peishan's face was cold, but he didn't lose his temper. This old man's granddaughter hasn't been found yet. I'll have to trouble the city defense team to send a team to help look for her. Naturally, there wasn't a portrait for them at this time. Besides, they didn't necessarily need a portrait to find someone. The leader of the Hidden Flame Army didn't even think about it before he agreed to help. Originally, it was already somewhat selfish to ask the city defense team to help, but this Hidden Flame Army leader still wanted to curry favor. That was really dereliction of duty. Then go into 100 Flowers Tower and help this old man look. The leader of the Hidden Flame Army was almost scared out of his wits by Luo Peishan's cold gaze. My lord, please forgive me. My lords, this place is chaotic and really unsafe. Why don't we move first? He glanced at the little Jiao Jiao next to him. If anything happened to these people, it would definitely be a matter of life and death. No need. Do your own thing. From the beginning, they stood in a relatively safe corner that didn't block the way. The fire couldn't spread to this side, and it also wouldn't affect those who escaped death and left in a panic. If it weren't for the fact that two of them were old men and the other was a young lady in her boudoir, and that it was easy for something to happen in this chaos, they probably would have helped to look for her. Time passed little by little. Luo Peishan's expression became worse and worse. He was almost certain that his dear granddaughter didn't manage to leave 100 Flowers Tower. For a moment, he blamed himself. If he hadn't been greedy and wanted to bring that girl out, and if he had watched over her more, she probably wouldn't have suffered such a tragic accident. There was also his old wife. She loved Third Lass so much. How could she bear to see her child die before her own? Found her. Master, third young lady has been found. The servant's excited voice came from afar. Looking at the raging fire in 100 Flowers Tower, Luo Peishan almost despaired. For a short period of time, he even seemed to have lost his soul. The servant's voice suddenly woke him up. Where? Following the voice, he hurriedly went to greet him. Sun Yijia, who had a sad look on her face, immediately showed a happy expression and quickly followed her. Nanny Gong limped over slowly with Jingwan in her arms. Sun Yilin stood beside her to protect her. Although Nanny Gong's feet looked inconvenient, her hands were steady. What happened? Luo Peishan saw that Nurse Gong's hair was messy, and her face and body were covered with soot. Looking at her posture, he could tell that her feet were badly injured. More importantly, third young lady seemed to be unconscious. Master, please forgive me. It's all this servant's fault for not protecting Miss well. There were too many people, and when they went downstairs, Miss was accidentally bumped into. This servant was worried that she would not be able to come out for a while, and seeing that the back door was closer, I brought Miss there. Unexpectedly, the back door was just as chaotic. When they passed through the corridor, a wooden plank fell, and they were pushed. This servant sprained her ankle, and Miss was knocked on her head. With Miss like this, it was inconvenient to carry her, and it took us a long time to come out. In order to cover up for both sides, Nanny Gong blurted out the time when Jingwan was unconscious, because she knew very well that Jingwan was absolutely fine. She would not be questioned about the details, but she felt quite guilty. How could she not feel guilty? If it were not for the living Yama, how could they be so embarrassed? Even if he had some kind of plan, he could have avoided them. But because of his shameful thoughts, they all suffered. Fortunately, he didn't do too much to the girl. Otherwise, she didn't know if she would be able to hold back her anger and fight with him. Although Jingwan fainted, she looked much better than Nanny Gong. Luo Peishan obviously could not blame her. Let's go back first. However, although Nanny Gong held Jingwan firmly, her feet would affect her speed and delay Jingwan's treatment. Jingwan had fainted, and no one knew how serious her injuries were. Should they change to another servant girl? Most likely, the servant girl could not carry her, and others. Master, it's better for this servant to carry him. This servant's feet are fine. In order to smooth things over, the injury on her foot must be real. However, that injury really didn't matter to her. If she let the man hug her, she didn't know what kind of madness the king of hell would go. If it was a servant or an attendant, he would definitely secretly kill him. If it was young Master Sun, he probably wouldn't die, but he would have a bloody misfortune. Luo Peishan hesitated for a moment and nodded. The reputation of Miss was too important. He said goodbye to 5th Tai Ching and Sun Yilin and left in a hurry. Nanny Gong did not care about herself and left quickly. The remaining two parties also left separately. Sun Yijia saw his 5th brother staring absent-mindedly at the direction where Jingwan and the others left. It was extremely rare for him. Moreover, his nervousness about Jingwan was definitely not fake. Some things were already very obvious. Thinking about the last time in their family, Li Ruyu seemed to be the one who found fault with Jingwan. His 5th brother's behavior might not be, because Li Ruyu's behavior really angered him. He said that he talked to someone, and it must be a woman. At that time, even if they really bumped into each other accidentally, Jingwan would not take the initiative to talk to fifth brother. It was the first time that fifth brother took the initiative to talk to a girl in the boudoir. Fifth brother, I'll go to the Luo family to see Sister Wan later. Okay. Sun Yilin agreed, almost without thinking. However, he seemed to think of something and frowned slightly. I just feel like old friends with Sister Wan at first sight. What's wrong with a girl in the boudoir making friends with her? You're right. I'm thinking too much. Although people from different factions were influenced by their elders, and the younger generation rarely became good friends, it was not impossible. They might have to be careful when making friends with men, but it was really not a big deal when making friends with women, especially unmarried women. Fifth brother, you're confused because you're too concerned, Sun Yijia said with a smile. Sun Yilin saw Sun Yijia's teasing gaze and knew what she was thinking. He coughed to cover it up. Don't think too much. Sun Yijia's smile became even more meaningful. However, it quickly disappeared. I agree with Sister Wan's words. However, if she's the daughter of the Luo family's eldest son, there might be a little possibility. Her marriage was controlled by others, and her fifth brother could not get his way. Even if she thought it through, it was inevitable that she would feel depressed. It did not matter if she did not have someone she liked. However, if she did have someone she liked but could not get what she wanted, she would definitely feel bitter. Don't worry, I know what to do. Sun Yilin saw that his sister had exposed him and did not try to hide it anymore. Anyway, when he saw that she was still alive, he had already confirmed some thoughts. There was no dejection in his words. Instead, he was rather confident. The first thing that came to Sun Yilin's mind was, could it be that his fifth brother was preparing to ask the emperor for a marriage? Based on how much the emperor doted on him, this was not impossible. His eyes could not help but brighten. Who could stop the emperor's edict? Sun Yilin's backing was naturally not the emperor. As the emperor, no one knew how long his favor and trust would last. The emperor was a wise ruler, and his temperament was not unpredictable. However, Sun Yilin had never thought of taking the initiative to ask for anything from him. Grandmother would help him, but it was not urgent for the time being. That would have to wait until after his sister was engaged. However, Sun Yilin still felt guilty towards his sister and hesitated whether he should tell her about it. Let's go. Let's go back first. As the only fish that escaped the net, a certain shadow guard was seriously injured. He hastily treated his injuries, changed his clothes, and forced himself to enter Prince Rui's residence. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652923. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 43. Originally, Li Hongming was waiting for the good news in the study. He was calmly practicing calligraphy. When the hidden guard entered, he didn't even look up. Where's the thing? Your Highness, please forgive us. The mission failed. We were ambushed. Our brothers all died in order to protect us. Li Hongming suddenly tightened his grip on the brush. In an instant, the veins on the back of his hand bulged. He clenched his teeth and his face was ashen. He was obviously suppressing his anger. In the end, he didn't succeed. He slammed the brush on the desk and angrily flipped the things on the desk. Trash. The hidden guard knelt on the ground. He endured the severe pain and didn't make a sound. Li Hongming turned the desk and kicked it. The hidden guard was kicked to the ground, but he struggled to get up and still knelt upright. Li Hongming saw the dark red blood on the ground and didn't kick a second time. Speak, what happened? The hidden guard clearly recounted the situation in full detail. He was impartial and didn't have the slightest mixed emotions. Li Hongming was almost certain who did it, but he still wanted to confirm further. He didn't want to jump to conclusions based on his own guesses. Do you know the background of the other party? It's Prince Kang's men. One of them has fought with this subordinate before. Although I haven't seen his face, this subordinate is very sure of his background. Li Hongming clenched his fists. Li Hongyi, this prince underestimated you. I originally thought that you were just a defeated opponent. I didn't expect that after years of hunting, you would be pecked in the eye by an eagle. Good, very good. Let's wait and see. Go and recuperate. Yes, this subordinate will take his leave. The hidden guard got up, but he suddenly felt dizzy. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he fell to the ground. Because of the pain, he clenched his teeth, and his whole body couldn't stop convulsing. Although he was still conscious, it was likely that he wouldn't make it. Why haven't you called a doctor yet? Li Hongming angrily said. This person was one of his elite soldiers. He was very distressed that so many of his men had died. He saw that he was still useful, so he didn't punish him. But this was the result? The mansion doctor hurried over. After taking his pulse, his complexion wasn't good. Your Highness, the poison has penetrated deep into your organs. There is no saving you. Li Hongyuan looked at the black blood on the ground and finally reacted. An endless storm was brewing in his eyes. Send him on his way. Thank you, Your Highness. The pain of the poison was not something an ordinary person could endure. It was better to die quickly. From Li Hongming's point of view, this was Prince Kang's way of not leaving anyone alive. In reality, Li Hongyuan knew that Li Hongming was very suspicious, so he left someone to pass him the evidence. However, it was not easy to train a hidden guard. Naturally, it was better to have one less hidden guard. With this, Li Hongming was completely unaware that the people who surrounded and killed his subordinates were all dead. Naturally, he was even more certain that it was Prince Kang's doing. Although the item in 100 Flowers Tower wasn't particularly important, it was still a weakness that could be used against him. If it wasn't handled well, it could cause him to lose more power. As for the situation over there, he still wasn't clear. Li Hongming was considering whether to send someone to investigate and see if it was possible to bring the item back. Or should he simply give up on that part of his power and clean up the mess to better protect himself? No matter what choice he made, his losses were certain. The only thing he could do was to minimize the losses as much as possible. Your Highness, young Master Lu requests an audience. Li Hongming didn't have a good impression of his brother-in-law. However, he still needed his help occasionally, so it wasn't good to reject him. Moreover, he might know something about the situation. The hidden guard's corpse had already been taken away, and the blood on the ground had been wiped clean. Please come in. Brother-in-law. Perhaps he was used to being casual, but he didn't even greet him when he came in. He grabbed the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, then gulped it down in 2 gulps. Li Hongming looked at him. His eyes clouded over. What happened? Young Master Lu eloquently recounted everything that had happened. He kept saying bad luck and bad luck. Li Hongming listened patiently. But there was only one conclusion. This idiot didn't provide any useful information other than bringing out the fake tricolor peony. However, was Sun Yilan's existence a coincidence, or was it Li Hongyi's deliberate arrangement? If it was the former, then there was nothing to say. If it was the latter, then what was his motive? Li Hongming sent his brother-in-law away, but he also decided to give up on Baiwa Tower. Li Hongyi's people might still be watching over them. If he caught something that could be used against them, then the losses would outweigh the gains. Thinking of cutting off his tail to survive, Li Hongming's heart bled. He swore that he would make up for it 100 times over from Li Hongyi. Who would have thought that Li Hongming's anger would only be stronger than his? He thought that his plan was flawless, but in the end, he still fell into Li Hongming's trap. Although he didn't lose anything important, the loss of his hidden guards made his heart ache. More importantly, he was still angry that he couldn't scheme against Li Hongming. His imperial father valued Li Hongming more, and the courtiers thought that Li Hongming was stronger than him. However, every time he fought with him, he lost more than he won. That kind of unwillingness and resentment sometimes drove him crazy. Because Luo Peishan sent someone back to report ahead of time, when they returned to the Luo family, including old Madame Luo, was waiting outside the gate. When they left, they were still fine. How long had it been? But now they were all in a mess. Master, old Madame Luo, who had always been calm, couldn't hold it in anymore. She quickly walked forward and grabbed Luo Peishan's arm. Are you hurt? Luo Peishan patted her hand comfortingly. I'm fine. The most important thing is the third girl. Send her back first, and let the doctor take a look at her. Old Madame Luo naturally saw Nurse Gong, who was about to get out of the carriage with Jingwan in her arms. The servant who came back earlier said that the third girl had fainted. It was quite frightening. What are you waiting for? Hurry and help the third girl down. Old Madame Luo hurriedly sent Jingwan back to the begonia house. The old doctor in the mansion was already waiting for her. Jingwan was in the inner chamber. Other than the servants by her side, only her mother, Madame Zhang, was there. The other mistresses in the mansion were all gathered outside. Because old Madame Luo was there, no one dared to say anything. Even people like Luo Jingying, whether they were gloating in their hearts or cursing Jingwan for not dying directly, didn't dare to show the slightest expression on their faces. Soon, the old doctor came out. Doctor, how is my granddaughter? Old Madame Luo asked with some urgency. Old Madame, don't worry. The third girl is fine. The injury on her head is not serious, and there is no blood clot. The reason why she fainted was probably because she inhaled some smoke and was a little frightened. She will wake up soon. In fact, there was no red mark on Jingwan's head. Although he was old, he was a man after all. It was impossible for him to pull Jingwan's hair to see if it was a red mark. Ba. That's good, that's good. She finally breathed a sigh of relief. I will have to trouble the doctor to take a look at the master. Luo Peishan insisted that the doctor take a look at Jingwan first. He knew that he was fine, but if he didn't let the doctor take his pulse, everyone would be worried. Old Madam is too polite. This is my duty, the old doctor hurriedly said. After sending the doctor away, old Madame Luo went to the inner chamber to take a look at Jingwan. She ordered the maids to take care of her carefully and to send someone to inform her as soon as she woke up. She then looked at Nurse Gong, who had taken care of her ankle sprain. After a simple wash and change of clothes, Nurse Gong stood steadily and was still meticulous. She didn't see anything wrong with her. Old Madam heard from the young maid that her ankle was swollen like a steamed bun. For the past 2 years, Nurse Gong has done her best to take care of Wan Wan. I have seen it all. This time she has done a good job protecting the master. Old Madam, I don't deserve it. I can't escape the blame for Mrs. Condition. Old Madame Luo waved her hand. That was just an accident. There's no reason to blame you. I'm not that unreasonable. You should take care of yourself. Wan Wan is used to you taking care of her. I don't feel at ease if someone else comes to take care of her. I will leave someone here to help you for the time being. When you recover, let her go back to my place. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652924. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading URL, mbicken.com. Chapter 44. Madame Luo left her most reliable mother in Begonia Elegant House. Even though she didn't like Madame Zhang, she still told her to pay more attention to her children. Madame Zhang was an old woman, so she shouldn't be involved in romantic affairs all day long. In the past, Madame Luo basically ignored her. It was the first time that she had said such words to her. Madame Zhang blushed and agreed in a low voice. Madame Luo left and took the other irrelevant people with her. Sure enough, just as the doctor had said, Jingwan woke up less than an hour after the group of people left. The servants had already helped her bathe and change her clothes. She felt refreshed and did not feel uncomfortable at all. It was probably equivalent to a good night's sleep. Looking at the medicine in front of her that was supposed to calm the nerves and suppress shock, Jingwan frowned. She still couldn't accept this bitter medicine. Besides, she really wasn't shocked. Could the old doctor not prescribe medicine so casually? Could she not drink it? However, her mother was staring at her with a tearful look. If she didn't drink it, she would probably have to face her mother's tears again. Miss, this is the only dose. If you are really okay, you don't need to drink it anymore. It will make Madam and Madam feel more at ease. What's wrong with your feet? Jingwan took the medicine bowl and looked at Nanny Gong, who was limping. Qing Zhu explained to her in a hurry. She exaggerated Nanny Gong's words and blamed herself for not being able to protect her. Nanny Gong acquiesced to Qing Zhu's words because some things couldn't be explained at all. According to her intelligence, if she really wanted to get to the bottom of it, she would easily notice something wrong. What Nanny Gong wanted was to give up the idea of asking. People like her also chose to show weakness at this time. Sure enough, Jingwan hurriedly asked her to go back to rest and didn't need to serve her for the time being. She didn't want to ask anything at all. She comforted Qing Zhu again. In the short time before Jingwan lost consciousness, her memory was actually quite vague. It was like some dreams. She basically didn't know the specific things. As for fainting after being hit, Jingwan also wondered whether it was a special situation, like sitting in a carriage. She had always been a healthy baby, not delicate. It was a little embarrassing to say it out loud. Forget it, let's not pursue this matter. More importantly, she trusted Nanny Gong. She let Nanny Gong off so easily. Granny Gong knew this very well, so she felt even more guilty. However, she had no choice. She couldn't say anything, and the young lady had important things to report to the King of Hell. If she refused, she didn't know what he would do. He might even attack the young lady's room at night. Fortunately, he only wanted to hold the girl in his hands. Jingwan drank the medicine as if she was going to die. Her appearance made the people around her cover their mouths to stifle their laughter. As her mother, Madame Zhang was the most unkind and directly laughed out loud. The main reason was that Jingwan was able to handle everything properly and was not like a girl from the boudoir. It was only at this time that people felt that she was truly a girl from the boudoir. After drinking the medicine, Jingwan hurriedly sucked on a candied fruit and heaved a sigh of relief. Jingwan didn't ask anyone to report to Madame Luo. She changed her clothes and went to the main courtyard. The others tried to stop her, but Granny Gong didn't. She knew very well that the young lady's health was as good as before. Madame Luo didn't expect Jingwan to come over by herself. She was a little worried about why she ran around after waking up. After Jingwan repeatedly assured her that she was really fine, she was naturally overjoyed. Jingwan asked about her grandfather's condition and was relieved when she learned that he only had a few scratches. Just now, Lord Diwu of the Supreme Court sent someone to deliver an ink peony. Your grandfather couldn't sit still. I'll go take a look as well. Before she could stop her, Jingwan stood up and bowed. Then, she hurriedly left. Madame Luo put down the hand that was reaching forward to hold Jingwan's hand and sighed, "This grandfather and granddaughter pair. Madame Luo, look at third young lady's spirit. I think she's really fine. You should be happy." A mother comforted her. Madame Luo laughed. "Yes, I should be happy. Old master is also full of spirit. When the grandfather and granddaughter get together and take care of the flowers and plants, old master won't lament that his children and grandchildren are unfilial. None of them have the same interests as him. When he's happy, the others will suffer less, so that they won't be scolded like quails all day. In fact, if the whole family knew that he liked flowers and plants, such as Luo Jingying and the like, how could they not think of ways to please him? A few children and grandchildren who knew about his hobby could do it casually, but they couldn't do it well. Not only did they not please him, but he also disliked them. He didn't want others to know, because he found them annoying. Now, in this family, there was no need to hide it. They should know that they didn't have the capital to compete with Jingwan. After knowing that her grandfather was in the flower room and not the front study, Jingwan felt even less pressure and directly went over. Grandfather. Hearing this, Luo Peishan raised his head and didn't ask about her physical condition. Whether she was well or not, he would know by looking at her spirit. That was why most of the time, men were more rational than women. You came at the right time. Grandfather really doesn't know how to deal with this black peony. Jingwan stepped forward and looked at the black peony. Compared to the first time she saw it, it was even worse. The petals had basically fallen off, and the leaves were probably smoked by the fire. Even if they weren't burned, they were seriously dehydrated. Girl, can it still be raised like this? Luo Peishan was very doubtful. Although it was rare, he really didn't like it. The worst flowers and plants in the flower room were countless times better than this. Jingwan carefully examined it. It can be raised. It doesn't look good now, but grandfather will definitely like it in the future. Grandfather, I heard from grandmother that it was sent by Lord Diwu. How did this flower fall into his hands? I thought this peony was buried in the sea of fire. If that was really the case, she would be very distressed. This should also be a mutated species. Who knew if there was a second one? Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. On the way back, the fifth Tai Ching bumped into someone carrying this peony. He remembered that you wanted it, so he stopped the person and asked about it. The person was just greedy and took it away. He wanted to raise it and maybe sell it for some money. Jingwan nodded. She didn't doubt it at all. Diwu Tai Ching and Luo Peishan also didn't doubt it. As for Mama Gong, who knew the truth, she probably kept a straight face and didn't say a word. The reason why Li Hongyuan didn't let Sun Yilin and his sister encounter this peony by chance was because he discovered some of Sun Yilin's thoughts. Even if his future right-hand man took a fancy to the person he loved the most, it was absolutely not allowed. It was already Li Hongyuan's kindness that he didn't immediately teach him a lesson. It was fine if he couldn't personally please Wanwan, but if he let other men with bad intentions do it. His brain wasn't filled with water. Of course, it would be best to send it directly to Jingwan without going through a middleman. However, the situation didn't allow it. If he missed today, it wouldn't be so easy to take it out in the future. Jingwan personally planted the peony back. Luo Peishan had never seen some of the treatment methods, so he watched with great interest. Grandfather, this peony was taken out by the young master of the Qin family. Regardless of whether it's his or his backers, when this peony is revealed in the future, will it attract trouble? Needless to say, Lord Diwu knew very well that secretly keeping and raising this peony was not a good idea. Some people were shameless, especially those with noble status. You really couldn't do anything about it. If it was under normal circumstances, it would be fine. The problem was that it was an eventful time to fight for the throne. People had to think more about it. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652925. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 45. Diwu Tai Ching, that old man will take care of it. You don't have to worry. If the other party really wants to do something, he will take care of it. Luo Peishan did not hide his shameless thoughts at all. Jingwan was somewhat speechless. Grandfather, is there really no problem? After all, this peony is in our hands. Do you think that old bastard sent this peony just because you like it? Would he be so kind? Isn't it because he took a fancy to the treasure in your hands? Do you know how many years he has coveted those treasured camellias? He can't even solve such a small matter. Does he have the nerve to ask? Third girl, let me tell you, if that old bastard doesn't bleed, you absolutely can't give your camellias to him. Grandfather, since Sir Diwu wants it, we can just plant another one for him. Although it's a bit difficult, it's not impossible. The mother plant definitely can't be given to him. She didn't know whether it was because of technical limitations or other reasons, but those flowers could not be propagated in large quantities. It was already good if 1 out of 100 could survive. The survival rate was unbelievably low. It was reasonable to say that it shouldn't be like this. After all, although the survival rate of the reproduction methods that already existed in this world was not very high, it was definitely not that low. Plant another one? Luo Peishan was interested. Jingwan first asked people to move the black peony to the Haidang elegant residence. Then, the grandfather and grandson pair started to do all kinds of things in the greenhouse. Jingwan regretted those small succulents, as well as the flowers and branches that she carefully selected. Although those were abandoned, Jingwan felt that the possibility of growing into plants was not small. Unfortunately, they were really buried in the sea of fire. The succulent bonsai could only wait for the peddler to get it again. Although most of the time one person was talking and the other was listening and then disregarded their identity and got their hands dirty, it was obvious that even if there was no obvious laughter, the atmosphere was very good, and both of them were physically and mentally happy. When Luo Jinghua came over with Chen Zhengmin, they saw such a scene. The two of them looked at each other, not knowing whether to go forward and disturb them. It was Luo Peishan who saw them first. He waved his hand, and the two hurried forward to greet him. Jingwan wasn't embarrassed by her clothes, nor did she avoid them. She calmly greeted them. Cousin Min, third brother. Chen Zhengmin couldn't help but take another look at Jingwan. No matter what, the girls he met on a daily basis were either gentle, dignified, playful, or cold and arrogant, but none of them would disregard their image like this. However, at this moment, Cousin Wan was exceptionally lively in his eyes. She didn't put on any makeup. Her face was healthy and naturally flushed, and her eyes were sparkling. Noticing Chen Zhengmin's gaze, she wasn't shy at all. Instead, she was a little puzzled. Cousin, why are you looking at me like that? Could it be that my face is also stained with dirt? She looked at her hands. They were even dirtier. She didn't dare to touch them. Chen Zhengmin blushed and coughed to cover it up. He turned his head away and said, "No, I was being rude." Jingwan smiled carelessly. She washed her hands and looked at the sun. It was getting late. Grandfather, granddaughter will go back first. Luo Peishan agreed. Change your clothes and go see your grandmother. Jingwan's eyes moved slightly. Something must have happened. Otherwise, grandfather wouldn't have specially instructed her. Yes. After Jingwan left, Luo Peishan looked at Chen Zhengmin again. At first, when his wife told him about it, he felt that this brat was barely worthy of his granddaughter. But now, he found him more and more unpleasant to the eye. Rascal, where are your eyes? She's almost gone, yet you're still sneaking peeks. Do you think this old man is blind? Don't you know that you shouldn't look at girls? Where's your gentlemanly demeanor? Then he thought about how his precious granddaughter would become someone else's in the future. She would become a pampered guest even if she came back to see him, let alone accompany him. Originally, he thought that these happy days were just beginning. Now that he saw the end, the more he couldn't bear it. Cough. His voice was like a clap of thunder, and anyone could sense his displeasure. Not to mention Chen Zhengmin, who had a guilty conscience. Even Luo Jinghua was startled. Brat, didn't you say that you would come next afternoon? Why are you here now? Listening to his usual serious voice, Chen Zhengmin felt that there was anger in his tone. He couldn't help but lower his posture. This student heard about the flower market by coincidence. I was a little worried for a while, so I came early to take a look. Once he found something unpleasant, Luo Peishan saw Chen Zhengmin's concern as ulterior motives. The news spread quickly. He wasn't surprised that outsiders knew that he was also in the flower market. After all, He and Diwu Taiqing had the highest status in the flower market at that time. This point couldn't be concealed. Moreover, this matter was strange. There might be more to it. Perhaps the entire imperial court would soon know the role he played in it. He glanced at Luo Jinghua again. Why are you still in a daze? Have you finished your homework for today? Luo Jinghua did not know how the fire had gotten to him. He had been by his grandfather's side for more than a day or two. Although he appeared serious on the surface, he was actually very angry right now. There was no mistaking it. If his grandfather got angry, even his father, who was the least afraid of his grandfather, couldn't withstand it. I haven't finished. Grandson will go back now. Luo Jinghua unkindly left Chen Zhengmin behind and ran away. His speed was still graceful, but it was definitely not slow. Chen Zhengmin felt a little cold behind his neck. He had a bad premonition. You go to the study and wait. This old man will change his clothes. Yes. Jingwan went back to the Haitang Inn to change her clothes. Nanny Gong asked the maids to specially take care of her hands. At this time, Jingwan had no human rights at all. If she dared to say no, the servants would not say anything. However, Nanny Gong looked at her with a serious face, as if she had done something wrong, and the maids stared at her with hidden bitterness, which was also unbearable. So, what she had to do was to accept it obediently. When Madame Luo looked at Jingwan's white and tender hands, she nodded with satisfaction. Madame Luo knew what Nanny Gong did as early as when she was in Qian Mansion. Therefore, even if Nanny Gong was not born in a noble family, she still valued and trusted her very much. She didn't just worship her, because she was a nanny from the palace. She was really good to Wan Wan. Wan Wan, what I want to tell you is about your cousin Min. That day, in Ding General Manor, because several princes were there, no one paid attention to Madame Ding's meeting with us. But after you left, Madame Luo told what happened later in detail. Sun Yilin is a good man, but Ding General Manor is a pool of muddy water. You can't marry him. When I mentioned your cousin Min, it was just an excuse to refuse. Your grandfather also said that you should make your own decision about your marriage. I don't want Wan Wan to be wronged. Madame Sun always has an excuse to deal with her. Jingwan knew that her grandmother told her everything. It was not because of her identity as Madame Ding and wanted her to see the situation clearly and decide on Chen Zhengmin as her fiancé, but because she didn't want to hide it from her. Grandmother, cousin Min is also good. Wan Wan, you can think about it again. There's really no hurry. Grandmother, didn't you say that people's hearts are fickle? Things in the world are impermanent. What's good now may not be good in the future. What's bad now may not always be bad. This life is lived by people. As long as you manage it carefully, there will be some problems no matter how bad it is. Besides, who said that a woman must rely on a man to live? Those women who are unhappy in the back house are partly because of men and partly because of themselves. Although I've only seen cousin Min 2 or 3 times, I feel that I have some standards for judging people. After all, she was not really a girl who lived in the boudoir. Her father in her previous life was a scumbag, but he also taught her a lot of things. Her judgment of people was definitely not just a few points. Madame Luo didn't know whether to be distressed or gratified. Well, you can meet with Min Gear in the afternoon. It won't be too late for us to decide then. Okay. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652926. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 46. At that time, she was very calculative about gains and losses. Later, because of her grandmother's silent correction, she changed. When others were sincere, She was willing to give them her sincerity. When necessary, she could also give them her sincerity first. However, if she did not receive a response, she would not hesitate to take it back. It could be seen that she was still more rational than emotional. If it was her family and friends, there might not be any problems. However, if it was a man, then she would probably never taste the taste of true love. It seemed that she was already deeply in love, but once the other party had a change of heart, she could say, "Since you are heartless, I will end it." If she could take it back just like that, was that still love? True love could last for a long time, but it could also go crazy without hesitation. When it was broken, one would want to redeem it. In short, they were inextricably linked. It couldn't be cut off completely just by pulling out a knife. Jingwan felt that it would be very, very difficult for her to truly fall in love with a man. Jingwan was deciding Chen Zhengmin's future with her grandmother. In Madame Luo's opinion, as long as they decided, it was enough. She did not think that Chen Zhengmin or her third brother would oppose. This was the mindset of most people. After all, her daughter was marrying into a lower family. Whether it was the family style or the girl herself, there was nothing to be picky about. What reason did they have to disagree? Jingwan, on the other hand, did not have such a domineering thought. Who knew if the other party had a girl he liked in his heart before he came to the capital, and was just waiting for him to pass the imperial examination and return to marry her grandly? It was actually very easy to find out whether he had a girl or not. If there was a girl, she would definitely not agree to the marriage. Although strictly speaking, there was no such thing as a mistress in this world. Concubines, and tongfang were all legal. On the other hand, Chen Zhengmin was in deep trouble. Last time, when his granduncle gave him pointers, he was quite appreciative of him and said that he would definitely pass the exam. His attitude seemed strict, but was actually gentle. This time, Chen Zhengmin broke out in a cold sweat. The questions in the books were getting more and more difficult and more difficult. When he solved the questions, although he was a bit stumbling, he still managed to answer them. Even if it was not the best, it was just passable. Current affairs and policy were terrible. No matter how knowledgeable he was, to put it bluntly, he was just a teenager. Although he was not ignorant of outside affairs and only focused on reading books, and had learned a lot from his grandfather, his understanding of national affairs was still limited. How could he compare to a veteran who had been immersed in officialdom for decades? Especially when he had decades of experience as an official. It was like an ant and a tree. Chen Zhengmin had seen many past exam questions. Even the palace examination was definitely not this complicated and profound. He complained in his heart, "Granduncle, aren't your expectations a bit too high?" How could he know that previously he was treating his old wife's grandnephew? So he naturally felt that he was outstanding enough. But now he was facing his future grandson-in-law. If he wanted to marry his beloved granddaughter, even the top three were far from enough. When it was time for lunch, Chen Zhengmin was finally released from a study. He felt like he was about to collapse. Even if he could not answer, Luo Peishan would not reprimand him. His bearing was still self-restraint, and he would only look at him lightly. Chen Zhengmin only felt that this gaze was even more unbearable than a scolding. But thinking about the benefits of this suffering, Chen Zhengmin braced himself and endured it. If there was a next time, he would not turn back and would not have the thought of avoiding it. Luo Jinghua saw that he looked like a frosted eggplant and was extremely surprised. "What's wrong?" Chen Zhengmin wiped his face and forced himself to be alert. Nothing. But no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like nothing was wrong. Thinking about his grandfather, Luo Jinghua naturally guessed the reason. Grandfather is a bit strict. He treats people like this, but he rarely says a word to outsiders. Chen Zhengmin nodded in deep agreement. He believed that he was not good enough. After lunch, they chatted casually, digested the food, and rested for a while. Luo Peishan dragged Chen Zhengmin to the study alone. It looked like he was going to spend most of his lunch break on him. This was a privilege that the children and grandchildren of the Luo family did not have. Luo Jinghua automatically went to Jingwan's place to learn painting. Just painting was very simple for Luo Jinghua, but he was far inferior to Jingwan in terms of the layout of the painting. Moreover, he was not as agile. Although Luo Jinghua had seen Jingwan's completed paintings, this was the first time he had seen the painting process. Seeing how relaxed and casual she was, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. This sister of his was indeed extraordinary. Fortunately, Luo Jinghua was not a rotten wood when it came to painting. His foundation was also good. However, when he saw his sister's hundreds of paints, he was amazed and envious. "Little sister, grandmother is really biased towards you." His tone was quite bitter. Jingwan smiled proudly. "Can't help it. Grandmother likes me." Luo Jinghua had not reached the point of competing with his biological sister for favor, but he still had the urge to vomit blood. Not to mention that his fourth sister and the others were jealous of her. He also wanted to beat her up. However, not to mention that hitting people was not what a gentleman should do. If he dared to touch her finger, his grandparents and parents would definitely crusade against him. If he did not handle it well, he would be punished by the family law and thrown into the ancestral hall. The difference between fine brushwork and freehand brushwork was naturally not small, but it was not difficult to really understand how to paint. However, many things were the same. It was easy to learn, but difficult to master. Speaking of the three brothers, Luo Jinghua, Luo Jingming, and Luo Jinghua, they were all now scholars. Although they would not participate in the examination this year, their standards were not inferior to Chen Jingmin's. They were very clear about the reason why their grandfather suppressed them, so they did not complain. For the sake of a Luo family, it was worth it even if their grandfather would have passed away and they would not have such a good opportunity. However, Luo Peishan's concept was that even if there was help, he could not completely rely on it. He had to rely on himself. Don't think about relying on the influence of your ancestors. Instead, think about supporting the entire Luo family for a long time to come. If the three brothers could pass the examination in the same year, the status of the Luo family would definitely rise to another level. A family with strong descendants and slightly weaker ancestors was more valuable than a family with strong ancestors and no successors. It was more worthy of being roped in. Not to mention other things. The choice of the Luo family's girls in marriage would be more than one level higher. Unfortunately, it was not the time for the Luo family to be in the limelight. The three of them may have different temperaments, but they had one thing in common. They had inherited Luo Peishan's perseverance. Although Luo Jinghua was usually a bit sloppy and occasionally not in tune, when he really calmed down to study, you would not find the slightest bit of impetuousness from him. It was said that people who were serious looked the best, regardless of gender. Look, Jingwan's maidservants, especially those who were not brought by her from Qian Prefecture, seemed to be a little moved. Jingwan looked at their innocent performance and was quite happy. However, it didn't matter if they secretly took a few glances. If they really had thoughts that they shouldn't have, even if it was the four head maidservants who had a deep friendship with her, she would never agree to it. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652927. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 47. Madame Luo is in the pavilion beside the lotus pond. She asked you to accompany her. Qing Lan entered the room and whispered. Jingwan paused. She raised her head and glanced at Luo Jinghua, who was concentrating. Then she looked at Nanny Gong, who was walking like a normal person. She decided to call for the wet nurse to walk with her. It was Granny Gong who spoke first. Young miss, this servant is really fine. That medicine is really effective. Although it was very painful at first, it's basically not painful anymore. She had told her to rest earlier, but she insisted on staying by Jingwan's side to serve her. Seeing that Nanny Gong didn't seem to be reluctant, she hesitated for a moment and nodded. Then Nanny Gong can stay with me. The others stay and serve the third young master well. Let him have a rest later. Don't be tired. On the way, do you think Cousin Min is a good man? Jingwan asked calmly. She was not shy when talking about these things. She was not asking Nurse Gong's opinion, but just asking Nurse Gong's opinion on Chun Jung-min. Child Chun is a talented man. Although I don't know how talented he is, he must be a young talent since he can get the master's approval. He seems to have a good character. I think he is a good man. Nurse Gong said. As for what she thought in her heart, no matter good or bad, no matter whether he is a good man or not, you will never marry him anyway. So, it's useless to say more. As for what that person would do, Nurse Gong didn't ask, let alone care. Jingwan smiled and didn't say anything. Sure enough, there was no Madame Luo in the pavilion. Only Chun Jung-min was half lying on the guardrail, throwing fish food into the water, and several people around Madame Luo were waiting outside the pavilion. The greetings of the maids attracted Chun Jung-min's attention. Jingwan walked in alone, and Nurse Gong also stayed outside. They were not close or far away, so others would not misunderstand. They talked in a normal tone inside, so people outside would not hear them, of course, except for Nurse Gong. Cousin Min, nice to meet you. Chun Jung-min hurriedly returned the salute. Cousin Wan, nice to meet you. Perhaps it was because the two of them were alone. Chun Jung-min was a little reserved. He was indeed innocent. Jingwan stepped forward, grabbed some fish food, and threw it into the water. The fish rushed up one after another to grab the food. Perhaps it was interesting. Jingwan threw a lot of food into the water. Cousin, don't spread it. If you eat too much, you'll turn over. Chun Jung-min hurriedly stopped her. That's right. A group of greedy little things can't be controlled by the person who feeds them. Jingwan didn't continue. Chun Jung-min felt that there was a hidden meaning in her words, but because there was no beginning or end, he couldn't make any guesses. Looking at the current situation, he wondered why his grandaunt hadn't arrived yet. It wasn't that he hadn't been alone with a girl before in his hometown and at his granduncle's residence. However, those few times were all blocked by people. If it wasn't because of bold women who shyly and timidly said that they liked him, then it was because they kept pestering him. For the former, he could gently and politely refuse, but for the latter, he could speak bluntly. But now, he was a little at a loss. He wanted to leave first, but his heart was faintly reluctant. Jingwan talked to him casually and didn't look at him. Chun Jung-min felt that his cousin was natural and generous, so he lost his elegance. The feeling of helplessness gradually disappeared. Moreover, he found that this cousin knew a lot of things. Although she wasn't well-read, it could be said that she was experienced and knowledgeable in another sense. He didn't know how well she read the classics and history books, but one thing was certain, she had read a lot of travel books. Also, his cousin was very bold. Her words occasionally revealed harmless jokes, which made him somewhat unable to resist. However, he enjoyed this kind of atmosphere more and more. It seemed that no matter what was said, the two of them could continue the conversation and wouldn't be speechless. Looking at her spirited eyes and that bright smile that came from the heart, Chun Jung-min couldn't help but be a little infatuated. Jingwan didn't treat him as a blind date, but as a pure friend. Perhaps she would probe a little, but she definitely didn't have a judgmental attitude. And from Chun Jung-min's words, she learned that he had traveled for a year or two to study. And those experiences were what Jingwan was most interested in, so she listened with great interest. Luo Jingying stood behind the flowers and trees in the distance, watching the two of them talking and laughing happily. She tightened her grip on her handkerchief, but she seemed to have thought of something and instantly calmed down. However, in the depths of her eyes, which others couldn't see, there seemed to be endless darkness. She turned around and left with her maidservant. It must be said that in this deep residence, other than her own brothers, It was very rare to see a youth of the same age. Even if it was a flower banquet or an outing outside, she would only see them from afar. Close contact was only for a short period of time, so much so that she couldn't even say a word. More than that, she only heard about them. It was true that she had some talent, but the people who pursued her were basically not real scholars or noblemen. It was this kind of situation that made it difficult for her not to be moved by the appearance of a person who wasn't inferior to many of the young masters in the capital in all aspects. After all, she couldn't catch those people, but it was much easier to catch this one in the palm of her hand. Luo Jingying took advantage of her cousin's reputation and came into contact with him twice. However, before she could do anything, she was ruthlessly restrained by her mother. There was only one reason. His status was too low. If she married him, she would only suffer. In Madame Lu's opinion, her daughter was good in every way. Even if there were some small flaws, she could erase them. Madame Lu had told her more than once that not to mention the nobleman in the capital. Even if her daughter was of nobility, she was worthy. Her daughter could be considered as the daughter of the founding duke, so she deserved to live a life of luxury and be sought after by others. Perhaps because she had heard too much, Luo Jingying gradually believed that it was her fate. It wasn't that she was unloved, but that her marriage hadn't arrived yet. As for those who secretly said that they wanted to marry her, the highest was the legitimate son of a fourth-rank official. She had always ignored them. It's just that this young lady didn't want. Luo Jingying smiled faintly, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She wouldn't admit that when Qin Zhengmin faced her, it was no different from facing a strange girl. He was a modest gentleman and didn't casually glance at a girl. Even now, he didn't even know who she was. Madame Luo, its fourth young lady. A maidservant came over from the direction where Luo Jingying was. Don't worry about her. A good girl was taught to be like this by Madame Lu. Madame Luo wasn't interested in changing her back. Since Jingwan didn't go to the home school, Luo Jingying had gradually stopped since 2 days ago. In her opinion, there was nothing to learn from the home school. In the past, everyone went to the home school, including Luo Jingxiang, before his engagement. Fourth uncle's children, except for those who weren't old enough to go to school, also started the school a few days ago. However, Jingwan was an exception. No matter what her mentality was, Luo Jingying wasn't interested in going to the home school. However, her parents actually agreed. After Luo Peishan and Madame Luo knew about it, they just nodded indifferently and didn't say a word. Perhaps they had nothing to say, but some people probably thought that they didn't care. Let's go. They said that they would come to accompany this old woman. If we don't go now, they will be anxious. Madame Luo held the maidservant's hand and walked towards the pavilion. Jingwan greeted Madame Luo's late arrival with a smile. Qin Zhengmin, who was originally looking forward to her arrival, felt a little strange at this moment. In Madame Luo's eyes, Qin Zhengmin's skills were naturally not good enough. Young people yearned, not to mention people like Wan Wan. In short, Madame Luo never thought that Qin Zhengmin would look down on Jingwan. Unless he already had deep feelings for another woman, sooner or later, he would fall in love with Wan Wan. Now it seemed that it was really fast. Madame Luo didn't find it strange. In her eyes, Jingwan was the best. It was normal for the best men in the world to fall in love with her at first sight. Jingwan was helpless about Madame Luo's incomparably strong confidence, but she couldn't correct it. Madame Lu also had the same attitude towards Luo Jingying. In the world, at least 9 out of 10 people were like this. It was just that the standards for what was good in their eyes were different, whether it was given by the younger generation or by them as the elders. Perhaps she wanted Jingwan and Qin Zhengmin to be together again, so Madame Luo took the two of them to play in the garden for half an hour. Not to mention, after Jingwan came to the capital, she didn't have a good tour of the Luo family. There were really a lot of places that couldn't be missed. Madame Luo, third young lady. A mama hurried over and saluted. Madame Luo saw the special texture and extraordinarily exquisite and beautiful invitation in her hand. You brought it here now? Whose is it? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652928. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 48. Madame Luo's face became serious. Why aren't you inviting her in? Sun Yijia had a noble status and was very polite. There was no reason for her to come another day. She glanced at Jingwan, lead her directly to the noble begonia house. Grandmother, third brother is still with me. Jingwan lowered her voice and then returned to her normal tone. Why don't you let Miss Sun come here directly? According to Miss Sun's character, there's no reason for her not to greet you. It's just that Cousin Min may have to leave for a while. Madame Luo nodded. Okay, we'll do as third miss said. Min Gear has been out for a long time. Go and find your granduncle. You can rest in the Luo family tonight. It won't be too late to go back tomorrow. Although Chunjung Min was reluctant to leave, whether there were guests or not, it wasn't appropriate for him to stay any longer. He bowed and left. As for Mama Gong, she didn't need Jingwan to say anything. She found an excuse and went back to the noble begonia house to drive people away. Then why did Miss Sun come to find Wanwan? Madame Luo was quite puzzled. Jingwan told her about the trip to the flower market. Sister Jia looks a little arrogant and cold. In fact, it's probably because it's lonely at the top. She's actually very good. After getting to know her, it's easy to get along with her. Madame Luo only knew that the flower market had a fire and Jingwan was injured and unconscious. She didn't know about other things, but she didn't know that there was such a relationship. She sighed with emotion. This fate is really wonderful. So many noble ladies in the capital want to be friends with Miss Sun, but they can't get what they want. Our Wanwan is the best. And Wanwan felt sorry for her from the first time she saw her. Maybe you two should become good friends. And it's probably fate. Everyone else approached her with a purpose. It was not that they were not sincere, but they still covered their sincerity with a layer of gauze. Jingwan was different. She just felt sorry and simply wanted to persuade Sun Yijia. However, she did not expect to touch Sun Yijia's heartstrings. What Madame Luo was thinking about was that if she could have such a close friend when she first arrived in the capital, it would be much easier for Wanwan to integrate into the capital's social circle. Few people would push her aside and find trouble with her. However, there were also pros and cons. Sun Yijia was not without enemies, and all of them were of noble status. No matter how much they usually argued with Sun Yijia, for the sake of the Empress's face, they would at most exchange words and would not really do anything. If Wanwan suddenly became close to her, those people might vent their anger on Wanwan. Once Wanwan suffered a loss in their hands, even the Luo family would not be able to seek justice. Seeing that her grandmother wanted to say something but hesitated, Jingwan naturally also thought of what Madame Luo could think of. Grandmother, not everyone likes money. I will try my best to avoid it. Yes, there were gains and losses. She could not forever not want to get something because she was afraid of losing it. Then, about Min Gear, Jingwan nodded slightly. Thus, the marriage between her and Chunjung Min was set. The next thing to do was to go through the formal procedures and let everything go through the open road. Sun Yijia did not see Chunjung Min. Otherwise, she might have asked or had doubts. Otherwise, she would have reminded her fifth brother early. Then, when Sun Yilin heard about it, he would not have been so lost for a long time. Perhaps it was out of habit, but when Sun Yijia walked in, Jingwan's first impression was, she was indeed a flower on a high mountain, beautiful, cold, aloof, and unattainable. This was her true self. The chatterbox in the morning seemed like an illusion. No, that was not right. That was a side of her that no one knew, a side that she would not easily show even to her closest relatives. Greetings to Madame Luo. You may rise. Perhaps it was because Jingwan had a different impression of her, but Madame Luo originally did not have any special thoughts about Sun Yijia. At this time, she appeared to be more intimate and gentle. Hello, older sister Jia, Jingwan said with a smile. Hello, younger sister Wan. There was an obvious smile on her originally cold face, and her eyes sparkled. Seeing that you are fine, I am relieved. In the morning, Sun Yijia was really frightened. When she did not see Jingwan, her hanging heart could not be at ease. Madame Luo saw that Sun Yijia was naturally close to Jingwan and did not have a high and mighty attitude. In the end, she was relieved and casually asked a few questions, such as whether Madame Sun was well and so on. In Duke Ding's mansion, Sun Yijia and Sun Yilin were the two most liked by Madame Sunday. However, Madame Sun did not treat them like ordinary people's grandmothers. She always had a smile on her face and did not ask about their well-being at all times. Their grandmother was always strict and serious. When she smiled, it was always faint. As for her kindness to outsiders, Sun Yijia never cared because she knew that her grandmother did not have much sincerity. Sun Yijia always thought that at least the grandmothers in the harem of officials and nobles should be the same as her own grandmother. But it turned out that was not the case. It turned out that younger sister Wan's grandmother treated her like a precious treasure in private. The natural intimacy could not be faked. It was a habit. Her grandmother's love for her and fifth brother was not fake. However, compared to the warmth of the grandmother and granddaughter in front of her, her family seemed a little cold. Faint envy could not help but appear in her eyes. In the face of Madame Luo's closeness, Sun Yijia's smile also increased. Madame Luo also called Sun Yijia Sister Jia. When Mama Gong returned, she also brought Qing Lan and Qing Mei with her. Madame Luo said, Sister Jia, it is really boring to be with an old woman like me. You can go play with Wan Wan. How could that be? It is my daughter's good fortune to be able to speak with Madame Luo. These words were not false. The feeling of being close to the present was something that could not be experienced at home. Madame Luo chuckled. That's enough. Your little mouth is just like Wan Wan's. You are used to making people happy. Then, with a few words, she dismissed the two of them. The two of them held hands and walked unhurriedly towards the elegant begonia residence. They chatted and laughed along the way. They were like flowers and jade, charming and beautiful. Bystanders who looked at them felt comfortable, and the depression in their hearts seemed to dissipate a little. Because of Sun Yijia's special identity, it did not take long for the entire Luo family's harem to know of her arrival. Everyone had different thoughts. As for Luo Jingying, who was pretending to be calm and collected, she once again broke her facade and tore her two handkerchiefs. She did not believe that Luo Jingwan would be so lucky. Perhaps it was because of something special, but she did not believe that she, Luo Jingwan, would have such a good life. It had to be said that Luo Jingying was sometimes a person who liked to be abused. She knew that every time she faced Jingwan, she would most likely be the one to suffer, but she still liked to get close to her. The situation that she saw was completely different from what she had expected. This kind of Sun Yijia was even more unheard of. Compared to the hundreds of thoughts that she had spent on Sun Yijia, she could not even exchange a single word with her. It was simply too nauseating. Miss Jiang family's cousin is here. Luo Jingying, who was tearing her handkerchief as if she was tearing Jingwan, suddenly showed a strange smile when she heard this. My cousin came at the right time. Invite her here directly. In Sun Yijia's circle, her second aunt's cousin, Chang Lingshan, was still a bitch. She said that she was on good terms with her, but she was never willing to help introduce her to her. She always said that she was not qualified to talk to her, and all her words were full of flaunting. She said that she had seen some rare things in Ding General Duke's mansion and received some good things from Duke Ding's wife. Everyone knew what she was thinking, but she could not fall out with her. They were good sisters. If they fell out with each other over such a small matter, wouldn't it seem that she was narrow-minded and would ruin her reputation? Chang Lingshan wanted to show that she was superior in front of others and wanted to satisfy her vanity. Luo Jingying was the best candidate. Luo Jingying wanted to enter Sun Yilan's circle, so the only ladder that she could use was Chang Lingshan. The two of them got along so well that outsiders thought that their relationship was very good. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652929. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 49. Before Chang Lingshan reached Luo Jingying's side, she had already seen Jingwan and Sun Yijia. She could not deceive herself and think that they were just people who looked like Sun Yijia. In order to please Sun Yijia, she knew her too well. Even if there was a smile on her face that she had never seen before, she was sure that it was Sun Yijia. Just as Luo Jingying wished, her jealousy and resentment at that moment could be felt by people who were far away. When Luo Jingying saw her, she almost laughed out loud. However, she seemed to have underestimated Chang Lingshan. In just a moment, Chang Lingshan put on a perfect smile and was ready to talk to Sun Yijia. She was a very realistic person. Since her cousin was close to Miss Sun, she could naturally take this opportunity to get closer to Miss Sunday. In order to achieve her goal, she did not mind flattering people she did not like. Cousin, aren't you worried that not only will you not be able to make friends with Miss Sun, but you will also make her unhappy? After all, everyone can see that Miss Sun is happy now. If her mood is disturbed, everyone can imagine how she will react. Luo Jingying said with a smile. Chang Lingshan stopped and looked at Luo Jingying. Cousin, you are right. I was too happy to see Miss Sun and forgot for a moment. Thank you for reminding me. Her smile was gentle, and her words and actions were very appropriate. In the eyes of people who had integrated all kinds of etiquette into their habits since childhood, her performance was too deliberate, unreal, and pretentious. You're welcome. After all, cousin has always been very good to me. Was Luo Jingying really reminding Chang Lingshan? She was just worried that Sun Yijia would treat this B***TCH differently for Luo Jingwan's sake. If she and Luo Jingwan became enemies, it would not be good for her. Naturally, she could not let Chang Lingshan take advantage of her. What she said was the truth. No one could find fault with her. How could Chang Lingshan not know Luo Jingying's purpose? The two of them were almost the same. She did not want to talk to her anymore. I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable, so I will go back first. I will come to play with cousin another day. That's a pity. I happen to have something to do here, so I won't see you off. Naturally, she would not remind her of what happened to her grandfather in the flower market. No matter whether it was inappropriate or not, as a granddaughter, she did not go to greet her grandfather. This was a big mistake. She would find out about it soon. When the time came, she could not cover it up by saying, I don't know. Shouldn't she pay her respects to her grandfather when she went to his house? In the past, if Luo Peishan was not at home, then she was not required to pay her respects. Gradually, she became used to it. But today, she was so agitated that she even forgot that her grandmother was in the backyard of the Luo family. When she went back, she would definitely be severely reprimanded by her mother. When she thought of other people's mistakes, Luo Jingying's heart was at ease. Even the anger she suffered from Jingwan dissipated a little. When Jingwan and Luo Jingbua were about to arrive at Begonia House, they bumped into Luo Jingbua. Luo Jingbua only knew that his sister had a guest, but he did not expect it to be Sun Yijia. He was slightly startled. Greetings, Mississippi. Sun Yijia returned the greeting. Jingwan smiled. Third brother, this is little sister. You know that third brother has been painting recently. I heard that you have a lot of paints here, so I came to take a look. Unexpectedly, you were not here. When I saw the paints, I did not want to get too excited and spill them, so I asked the servant girl to fetch water to wash them. Then, I saw the only book on your desk and flipped through it. I was a little fascinated. Your servant girl probably could not stand it and reminded me. Only then did I remember to go back and change my clothes. Can I lend this book to third brother to take a look? Luo Jinghua waved the book in his hand. Third brother, feel free to take it. Jingwan said indifferently. However, third brother's explanation seemed to be a little too clear. Even if he left a little later, there was no need for him to do so. There must be a reason. However, one thing was certain. He was really fascinated and did not leave for a long time. Third brother knows that little sister is the most considerate. Also, have someone send me some paints. Luo Jinghua said without any trace of politeness. Okay. With outsiders around, Luo Jinghua still did not behave properly. Jingwan felt rather helpless about this. Then I will leave first. Luo Jinghua casually cupped his hands towards Sun Yijia again. His departing posture was somewhat confident and at ease. Sun Yijia could not help but look at Luo Jinghua's back. The gongzi that she normally interacted with, whether it was her own brothers or those outside, including the princes other than Jin Qinhuang, which one of them was not a gentleman, modest and courteous. Their words and actions were not the least bit good. She was very clear that they were not like this in private. There was no need to talk about Jin Qinhuang. He was used to being insolent and did not put anyone in his eyes. He did not give anyone face. Even the emperor could not do anything about it. However, this gongzi was somewhat different. His words and actions were not the most strict, but it could not be said that he was wrong. However, he was free and easy and casual. His true temperament aside, it was probably that he did not have any conflict of interest with the Sun family. He did not care what impression Sun Yijia had of him. Wan Mimi, he is your blood-related older brother. Jingwan led Sun Yijia into the Begonia elegant residence. In the courtyard, she saw the servants that did not belong to the Luo family. This was probably the reason why Luo Jinghua explained. They came from the lotus pond and walked very slowly. This period of time could not be considered short. However, these people from the Sun family only saw him come out and did not see him go in. It was inevitable that they would think of something. Even if they were blood-related brothers, there were times when they had to pay attention to the precautions between men and women. Luo Jinghua naturally thought of Jingwan. Although he was not in tune, he would definitely not make a mistake when it came to matters that he should pay attention to. Jingwan's attention was not on those servants. Her gaze was somewhat fervently looking at the 1.5-meter tall peony that was full of vitality. The huge celadon flower pot was brand new. It was obvious that it had just been replaced. Sun Yijia saw Jingwan's expression and smiled somewhat proudly. It's for you. Do you like it? I spent a lot of effort to snatch it from fifth brother. Jingwan looked at it carefully. Not only was this peony in good condition, but it was also the best of the 4 famous flowers, Wei Zi. In this world, it was definitely a treasure that could only be encountered by chance and not sought. Although Jingwan liked it, she could not accept it. Jia Mimi, it's too precious. I can't accept it. What are you saying? If you were someone who didn't know about flowers and trees, I naturally wouldn't give it to you. However, you clearly know more about flowers and trees than my fifth brother. It definitely won't be wasted in your hands. Moreover, in my opinion, having a good sister like you is more precious than anything else. It must be young Master Sun's treasure. How can I, Wan Mimi, just accept it? Don't think too much. My fifth brother has collected all 4 famous peonies. There's also another Wei Zi that is even better than this one. Otherwise, even if I'm his biological sister, he would never give it to me. Sun Yijia would never tell Jingwan that her brother was preparing to transplant the other Wei Zi as soon as he returned. He wanted to borrow her hand to give it to Jingwan. She reminded him that if that was really the case, even if she snatched it, it would be too eye-catching. Who didn't know how precious these flowers and trees were to him? That was why Sun Yilin took a step back and settled for the next best thing. Sun Ijia knew that her fifth brother was really serious this time. After all, if one wanted to get flowers and trees from him, it would be fine if they were ordinary flowers. However, if one wanted famous flowers and trees, even the emperor would have to issue an imperial edict to obtain them. Of course, the emperor wouldn't go so far as to do such a thing. It could be imagined that he took the initiative and willingly gave away the best flowers and trees. What better way to prove his sincerity than this? Sun Ijia was going all out for her brother. The usually proud and arrogant Ding General Manner's legitimate daughter had put down her pride and coaxed and pestered Sun Yilin. In addition, she acted coquettishly and almost acted shamelessly. Finally, she got what she wanted and achieved a feat that others couldn't. This also showed the people of Ding General Manor how much Sun Ijia cared about this new friend of hers. Jingwan was still a little hesitant. Sun Ijia made a ruthless move. "Wan Mimi, if you don't want it, I'll immediately have someone burn it." Jingwan looked at Sun Ijia and said helplessly, "How can you be like this?" Sun Ijia raised her chin slightly and snorted. Her expression clearly said, "This is how I am." After deciding to accept it, Jingwan didn't argue. She first did a little treatment and then directly transplanted it into the courtyard. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652930. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 50. Although Jingwan's small courtyard was not as big as Sun Ijia's courtyard in Dukdingwa's mansion, nor was it as gorgeous, it had an exquisite layout. Sun Ijia liked it even more. In addition, there were no restrictions here, so she trusted Jingwan completely. Sun Ijia was even showing signs of going crazy. Her personal servants, especially the wet nurse, wanted to say something many times, but in the end, they held back. They had never seen their young lady so happy. Without comparison, some things were hard to discover. Thinking back to the past, they only thought that she was the most standard and the most outstanding noble lady. They only thought that she had a cold personality, but it turned out that she was restraining herself and even suppressing her own nature. Perhaps she had never been truly happy before. They were inseparable from her almost every day. Even if they didn't completely understand her thoughts, they more or less knew. Although they felt sorry for her, because of her usual habits, they only thought that she was just a little heavy-minded and shouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, even if they wanted to comfort her, their words wouldn't have any effect. After a long time, it was even harder for them to say anything. She was of noble birth and could have lived a carefree life. However, because of her noble status, she was tightly bound by it. Because her ancestors and fathers wanted to protect the Sun family's foundation that had been accumulated for thousands of years, they were never satisfied with their noble status. If they wanted to be more noble, then they had to give and sacrifice. And the person who enjoyed the most would definitely have to sacrifice the most. She had 3 blood-related brothers, so perhaps they could share some of the burden. She was the only daughter of the first wife. This only represented uniqueness and also sorrow. When Sun Ijia came down from the swing, her servants' hearts that were in their throats finally settled down. Just now, Sun Ijia had asked them to push harder and harder. She was getting higher and higher, and even the flying sound of her clothes even made it sound. They were afraid that she would fall. One had to know that when she sat on the swing in the past, at most, her feet wouldn't even be considered high from the ground. This time, the height of her flying height was almost the same as the horizontal bar above. The wet nurse hurriedly looked at her palm. Sure enough, it was red from the abrasion. With a gentle touch, Sun Ijia couldn't help but withdraw her hand. It was obvious that it was painful. What should I do? What should I do? Sun Ijia didn't care. She only knew that she was very happy now. This little bit of pain was nothing. Nanny, I'm fine. Ah, blood. Ching Ju pointed at the blood on the swing and exclaimed. Almost everyone present knew what it was immediately, including the rash Ching Ju. After she spoke, she realized that she had done something wrong. Her face instantly turned red, and she was at a loss. Ching Ju hurried forward to pull her away and secretly glared at her. Sun Ijia, who was originally in a good mood, was now so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole to hide her face. She finally noticed the slight discomfort of being ignored by her. If it were in the past, she would have noticed it a long time ago. Even when she first had her period, she had never been so embarrassed before. Moreover, it was in front of little sister Wan. Fortunately, it was at little sister Wan's place. If it had been in the morning, it would have been even more embarrassing. However, she wasn't so crazy in the morning that she didn't notice it. She would have noticed it immediately and definitely wouldn't have embarrassed herself. Fortunately, Sun Ijia's wet nurse knew that her daughter's period was not very accurate. However, she also knew that it would probably be in the next few days. Before she left, she had already made preparations. Miss Luo, I need to borrow your place. Nanny, you're treating me as an outsider. Jingwan waved her hand and walked to Sun Ijia's side. She gently stroked her back. Sun Ijia, who was comforted, breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the maidservant's shyness and slight panic, Jingwan was calmer than the wet nurse and nanny. She ordered the maidservants to fetch hot water. After confirming that Sun Ijia indeed had a change of clothes, she asked her wet nurse to help and led Sun Ijia to the room to change. When Sun Ijia finished changing, her face was still a little flushed. However, she felt much more comfortable than before. She couldn't help but whisper, "Little sister Wan, you're so smart." She replaced the contents of the menstrual belt with cotton. The stitches were so fine and dense that it was almost impossible to see. It wouldn't be abrasive at all. Then, she sewed the underwear onto the specially made underwear. It was close-fitting and comfortable to wear. It might be very troublesome for ordinary people, but for noble ladies like her, there were so many people serving them. Even if they changed frequently, it didn't take much effort to do it. Moreover, they basically didn't need to take apart and wash them. Jingwan chuckled. Big sister Jia, it might be a little tight. However, I think that after you go back, your servants will help you deal with it. Sun Ijia's wet nurse hadn't come out yet. Jingwan's wet nurse was also still in the room. Sun Ijia saw that Jingwan was calm and composed, and gradually stopped being shy. Whether it was in her heart or in her appearance, she had shared the most intimate things. Even her own sisters weren't so close. Sun Ijia felt that little sister Wan was good no matter how she looked at it. It would be great if she was her biological sister. However, it didn't matter. It was the same to let her be her sister-in-law. It hadn't even been a day, but Sun Ijia could completely open her heart to someone without any precautions. It was definitely a miracle. However, perhaps she could also feel that Jingwan didn't have any bad intentions towards her. Miss, it's ready. Qing Mei brought over a small bowl of reddish-brown water. Jingwan gestured to Sun Ijia and said, I asked the kitchen to cook it. Drink it. It's good for your blood and can warm your stomach. Sun Ijia didn't hesitate at all. She picked it up and used a spoon to ladle it up and drank it one mouthful after another. After Sun Ijia finished drinking, she wiped her mouth. Little sister Wan, what did you cook it with? Not only is it delicious, but after drinking it, it's very warm and comfortable. When you go back, I'll give you the recipe. This recipe can be used by any woman. Although the degree of effectiveness is obviously different, it's beneficial and not harmful. When you go back, ask the servants to cook it for you. You can also drink some on a daily basis. Sun Ijia accepted it without hesitation. How is it? Does it still hurt? Jingwan held Sun Ijia's hand and touched her palm that was still a little red. I don't know what your wet nurse applied on my hand, but it's very cool and comfortable. It's much better than just now. When we go back, it'll definitely be fine. That's a cream made by Nanny. It's very effective for these small abrasions and cuts. I often fiddle with those flowers and trees by myself, so it's inevitable that my hand will get some small injuries. It's all thanks to Nanny that my hand can be so well maintained. Sun Yijia played with Jingwan's hand. It's true. Your hand is even prettier than mine. However, it's not just your hand. I feel that little sister Wan's skin is very good everywhere. She rolled up Jingwan's sleeve and lovingly stroked her arm. Not only that, she even reached out to pinch her face. Jingwan smiled and dodged. I have my own secret recipe, but I've used it all up. After I came to the capital, I didn't have time to make it. Why don't I give you some to try? Why don't I give you the recipe, and you can have some and make it? No, such a precious recipe is one of a kind. Do you think it's like those blood-nourishing recipes that can be found everywhere? You give it to everyone you see. You're really thoughtless. Jingwan pointed in the direction of the Wei Zi with her chin. Sister Jia is not the same. You're thoughtless. I'm presenting it to Buddha with borrowed flowers. It's not mine, so I don't feel bad at all. Just like Sister Jia, although it's mine, it's not very important, so I don't feel bad. Even so, Sun Yijia still refused. If she took such a good thing back and had someone make it, it would be impossible to keep a secret. She had come into contact with too many nobles, so it would be better for it to be leaked from little sister Wan's hands. She might even gain some benefits. These benefits to her were just icing on the cake. It was completely unnecessary. In little sister Wan's hands, it might be of great use. Just give me more of the finished product. I'll secretly hide it and use it myself. I won't give it to anyone. Jingwan smiled and nodded in agreement. When Sun Yijia's wet nurse came out, she saw that her young lady was in good spirits, and her face was rosy. She was not like her usual self. These days, she was always listless and pale. Sun Yijia did not hesitate to praise the drink just now. Sun Yijia's wet nurse was very clear that her young lady's condition was not only because of the bowl of sugar water. Her good mood was also a big factor. However, all of this was because of Jingwan. Hence, she thanked Jingwan very seriously. Nanny, you're too polite. Since you call me sister, you naturally won't call me that for nothing. Jingwan smiled faintly. If Jingwan was good to someone, she would not hold back anything. She did not even care about the invisible rule of not giving away things that had entered her mouth easily. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652931. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 51. Jingwan's servants didn't look happy, but Jingwan's expression didn't change. I have a guest here. If she has something to say, tell her to come back later. Her tone was light, but she wasn't polite at all. But the servant girl still wanted to say something. What? Third older sister's guest is so honorable that I, as her younger sister, can't bear to see her? Luo Jingying was dressed in plain clothes and had a bit of elegance. She walked over gracefully with a gentle smile. Jingwan saw several people following behind her, including the servant who guarded the courtyard. The servant's face was slightly angry at this time, and her clothes and hair were slightly messy. She didn't need to think to know that she stopped Luo Jingying from coming in. So Luo Jingying brought people and forced their way in. Anyone could tell that there was something wrong with her words. Although Sun Yijia was the only legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, there were also several sisters born of concubines in the family, not to mention many cousins. Because her status was the most honorable, she couldn't bear to see them fawning over her, so her relationship with them was similar to that of an outsider. Although she rarely asked about those things, she knew a lot of troublesome things. However, since it was related to younger sister Wan's family matters, she sat on the side and remained silent. Her face returned to its usual coldness. It's not that I can't bear to see you, but that I don't want you to see them. It's troublesome. Luo Jingying's smiling face stiffened. She didn't expect that Luo Jingwan would be so rude in front of outsiders. Third older sister, your words hurt younger sister's heart. If your heart is hurt, go find a doctor to prescribe medicine. I don't treat patients here. Sun Yijia almost laughed out loud and hurriedly covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Younger sister Wan was such a good-natured person, but there were also times when she was sharp-tongued. Luo Jingying repeatedly told herself to stay calm. Her mother's words echoed in her mind over and over again. However, her mother didn't know that Luo Jingwan was a person who didn't play by the rules. She never cooperated with you when you tried to maintain a harmonious relationship with her. She didn't care about what other people couldn't say. She often went straight to your heart. No matter how good-tempered you were, you would be angered by her. Moreover, Luo Jingying wasn't a good-tempered person. Third older sister, please don't be angry. Younger sister only admires Miss Sun's talent, but I never had the chance to be friends with Miss Sunday. Today, when I found out that Miss Sun came to the Fu to look for third older sister, I couldn't suppress my yearning and shamelessly came here. When she turned to look at Sun Yijia, her eyes were quite fervent, and she greeted her in a dignified manner. Sun Yijia nodded. Miss Luo is too kind. My talent is nothing. It's just a small matter. On the other hand, Miss Luo's poetry is agile and graceful. It's very well written. Therefore, even if she was as prideful as she was, one shouldn't underestimate her way of doing things. In the capital's social circle, even if there were unmarried women who were far from her level, she would still remember them even if she had only met them once or twice. She would know their talents in certain aspects. Sure enough, Luo Jingying revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Has Miss Sun seen my poetry? Then, she slightly restrained herself and smiled humbly. However, she couldn't hide the pride in her eyes. I'm only slightly good at poetry. I'm far from Miss Sun's proficiency in the four arts. However, speaking of which, third older sister isn't bad in these aspects. After all, grandmother dotes on third older sister so much. In the past few years, in Qianfu, she must have hired a master to teach third older sister. Third older sister and Miss Sun are so close. If there's a chance for you to cooperate, it might be a good story. Oh, then I really can't do as you wish. It's not like fourth younger sister doesn't know that older sister is just a common person. I can't even recognize a few words. Naturally, I can't play with those elegant things. Therefore, Luo Jingying always wanted to tear her mouth apart. She was clearly embarrassed to speak, but she was always able to say it without a care in the world. She was calm and indifferent. Originally, she should be ashamed to show her face. However, from her mouth, these were clearly small tricks. It wasn't that she didn't know how to, but that she disdained to learn them. Third older sister, there's no need to be so humble. In front of fourth younger sister, older sister has never known how to write the word humble. Jingwan wasn't a mean person, but when she was mean, she simply wasn't human. No matter how good you were at dealing with people, she could easily make you speechless. However, until now, the only person she was mean to was Luo Jingying. Younger sister just wants to be close to third older sister. Third older sister, why are you always so harsh? Luo Jingying gently bit her lips with a delicate and pitiful look. Her words and actions were describing how bad Jingwan was. You should have been used to it long ago. You clearly know that you are being bullied by me every time, but you don't know how to avoid it. Every few days, you bump into me. Those who know will naturally understand that fourth younger sister is good at everything. On the contrary, I, as your older sister, am unruly, indecent, arrogant, and despotic. Those who don't know will just think that fourth younger sister needs to be taught a lesson. If you don't bully me, you will feel uncomfortable all over. Luo Jingying's face turned green and white. It was very interesting. However, even so, she still didn't leave. In the eyes of Sun Yijia and the others, it was simply a perfect confirmation of Jingwan's words. Sun Yijia looked at Luo Jingying with a strange look in her eyes. It was as if she was saying, "So there is actually such a person in this world." However, when she looked at Jingwan, there was a trace of respect unconsciously. It turned out that she could treat someone she didn't like this. Yes, she should bring her home and try it out next time. Jingwan was a little speechless. She seemed to have unintentionally led a perfect noble lady astray. Luo Jingying was the most upset. Clearly, it was Luo Jingying who was the bad one. Sun Yijia didn't see how bad she was and even took her words seriously. As expected, the arrogant beauty was just a facade. On the inside, she was just like that B*TCH Luo Jingwan. She was used to putting on an act to deceive the world. It was time for the world to see how rotten they were. She couldn't help but bear a grudge against Sun Yijia. One day, she would make these high and mighty noble ladies kneel at her feet. Luo Jingying knew that if she continued, she would only be humiliated. Thus, she chose to remain silent. Jingwan and Sun Yijia also ignored her. She didn't want to leave, so they pretended that she didn't exist. Because Sun Yijia was inconvenient, they talked quietly. "Young miss, it's not good. Concubine has miscarried. She's shouting that the madam caused her to miscarry. The madam wants you to go over." A sudden voice broke the silence. Even Sun Yijia felt a little awkward at this time. Such a filthy matter was brought to a young lady's house, and she even wanted the young lady to go over and take a look. What was this? What kind of rules were there to speak of? It made people even more suspicious. Was this family's backyard all like this? If this spread out, who would dare to let their young miss be on good terms with this family's young miss? It would lead their young miss astray. However, this old woman didn't come in from the outside. Instead, she came in from the side of Begonia House. Generally speaking, this kind of layout was known to be connected to the courtyard of the person closest to her. It went without saying who that person was. This old woman's words were a slap in the face. Luo Jingying covered her mouth in surprise. When she looked at Sun Yijia again, she was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. It seemed that she had dirted her ears by letting her hear this. "Young Miss Sun, I'm really sorry. I didn't think that." Jingwan glanced at her. Although she was still indifferent, Luo Jingying felt a little frightened and instinctively shut her mouth. The gloating feeling in his heart and the pleasure of seeing Jingwan embarrass herself suddenly disappeared. My mother usually doesn't care about things. She probably didn't know that there was such an unruly person in her courtyard. "Nanny, take this old woman away and teach her the rules," Jingwan said indifferently. The old maid immediately burst into tears. When she appeared and shouted those words without caring about anything, Nanny Gong was prepared. Two strong old maids immediately stepped forward to cover her mouth and dragged her away. Nanny Gong also followed. Jingwan looked at Luo Jingying again. "You've achieved your purpose of coming here. Now you can get lost." "Third sister, what are you saying?" "I'm here because of young Miss Sun, https://www. bicken.com/11/11807/6652932. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 52. This kind of superficial cultivation was not something that could be done overnight. No matter how calm she wanted to be, when her soft spot was poked, she couldn't help but panic. Jingwan's face was cold. "I know my mother's personality the best. She doesn't even dare to kill an ant, so why would she be so ruthless to take a life? In this Luo family's backyard, there are only two people who want to harm her. Either it was that idiot concubine who directed and acted on her own, or, since you knew in advance, The possibility of the latter person is higher. No matter who it is, she better clean up her tail, otherwise. Why aren't you getting out of here? Are you waiting for me to call someone to beat you out with a broom? Luo Jingying dared to be arrogant in front of Jingwan, but she had never seen her so cold. She was inexplicably afraid and didn't dare to explain anything. She took her people and fled. After she went out, she couldn't help but be even more afraid. Previously, when she came back from the garden, her mother asked her a few questions about why she was unhappy. She told her in detail, but Madame Lu only smiled and told her that she would help her vent her anger soon. She also said that it was better to have a noble daughter. She thought that it must be her mother who was going to make a move, so she almost didn't think about it and excitedly ran to Begonia House. In the end, she didn't get to see a good show. Not only would she be punished when she went back, but more importantly, she might ruin her mother's big plan. Jingwan sat quietly, but Sun Yijia clearly felt that her mood was not right. For the first time, she ignored the wet nurse's opinion and didn't get up to leave because of her signal. The matter had already happened, so leaving like this would hurt people's feelings. Moreover, the reason why that old woman came was obviously because of her. Otherwise, who would do such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? The purpose was self-evident. Little Sister Wan, Jingwan looked at her. She didn't want to smile, but she didn't force herself to smile. Sister Jia, I've let you see a joke. Little Sister Wan, in fact, this is nothing. Which backyard can be clean? Moreover, I believe you, and I also believe that the madam who can give birth to a woman like you is not a vicious person. Anyone with eyes can see that this matter is caused by a villain. Don't take it to heart. Sister Jia treats me sincerely. Since this matter is out in the open, I naturally won't hide it. We're good sisters after all. Naturally, we'll be honest with each other. I also believe that Sister Jia won't have a bad opinion of me because of this. I just hope that Sister Jia won't let this matter affect your mood. This matter won't affect me, but your sulky little face is affecting me. Sun Yijia reached out a finger and scratched her nose. Don't worry about this kind of thing. At the very least, there's still your grandmother. To be honest, Sister Jia, no matter what the reason is, I don't care. What I care about is that that little life is gone before it can even take shape. To be honest, I don't like father's concubine son and daughter, but that's only because of their status, not because of themselves. I can treat them coldly and ignore them as long as they don't provoke me. Under the same roof, I can live peacefully with them, but I don't want to see them lose their lives for no reason. Since the heavens allowed them to come to this world, others shouldn't take their lives away so easily. Sun Yijia was startled. She didn't think that little Sister Wan's heart would be so kind and gentle. This way of thinking isn't wrong, but sometimes this will harm yourself and your loved ones. Jingwan smiled faintly. Sister Jia, you're thinking too much. I'm just adhering to the principle of not taking the initiative to hurt or scheme against others. However, if others take the initiative to attack me, I won't be polite either. If I don't teach some people a deep lesson, they'll always think that our second branch is made of mud. Sister Jia, why don't you go back first today? Jingwan said as she moved closer. With Sister Jia here, it's not convenient for me to teach someone a lesson. It's one thing to let you know, and another thing to let you see it with your own eyes. This image is still important. Sun Yijia snorted with laughter. It's impossible for me to see it even if you want to. Even if you're willing, your family won't be willing. All right, I'll go back first. I'll come back another day to play. If you have nothing to do, you should go to Duke Dingwa's Fu to visit me. I'm usually very bored. Otherwise, be careful that I don't run to your house every day. Jingwan nodded in agreement. She had a servant girl copy the prescription for her, and then sent her away. Jingwan turned back. She wasn't in a hurry to go to Falling Plum House to take a look. Where's that biddy? Young miss, she's in the woodshed. Wet nurse, follow me. The others don't need to follow me. They knew that their young miss was worried that they would hear something they shouldn't hear. However, they didn't think that she was younger than them. Sometimes she was like this. As servants, they couldn't disobey her. Outside the woodshed, a rough biddy was guarding. Mama Gong wasn't there. She must have gone to check on Concubine Bai. After the door was opened, Jingwan walked in. She didn't care about the dirty and messy place in the eyes of others. Compared to the crying and howling before, the biddy was very quiet at this moment. However, unexpectedly, her body couldn't stop trembling. If it was because of the fear of death, it was understandable. However, from her eyes, Jingwan felt that it was more than that. Did she say anything? She asked the rough biddy guarding the door. Young miss, no. After bringing her here, Mama Gong asked her, but she didn't say a word. Jingwan nodded, not surprised. Now, she still doesn't want to say anything? The biddy raised her head and looked at Jingwan. Her lips moved, and there was hope and hesitation in her eyes. It was obvious that she was struggling in her heart. However, in the end, she remained silent, lowered her head, and curled into a ball. Jingwan left. She was not angry, happy, or sad. But it was this attitude that made the old woman even more afraid. Before, Nanny Gong did not scold her, nor did she order people to beat her. She just asked a few questions casually, and then approached her and said, "You can be considered as an elder of the Luo family, so you probably won't betray your master just for a little money. Since you can splash dirty water on Miss in front of outsiders, obviously you don't care about life and death, then you probably also have a foot in Mistress Bai's side. Make the best use of everything. You are not a lonely old woman. If you are really alone, you should be thinking about living a comfortable life. How could you do such a thing in your late years? There is only one possibility left. Someone has captured your relatives to threaten you. Perhaps you also need money for them. It is understandable that you did such a thing. However, it is understandable, but it is unforgivable. No matter how many relatives you have, whether they are in or out of the mansion, you will meet them one by midnight tonight at the latest." The biddy didn't want to believe it, and she didn't want to believe it. However, Mama Gong's attitude was too calm and firm. In addition, the third young lady didn't panic at all. Even if she repeatedly denied it, she became more and more afraid. She was old, and it didn't matter if she died, but her only grandson's parents died early, and he was less than 10 years old. The more the biddy thought about it, the more tears fell down. The third young lady had always been kind. Perhaps. The biddy suddenly got up, rushed to the door, and knocked hard on the door. "Young lady, I know I'm wrong. I'll tell you everything. I don't deserve to die. I only beg you to save my poor grandson." However, no one could hear her. It was quiet in the falling plum house. This was the main courtyard of the second branch. Only Jingwan's parents lived here. The concubines and the 2 concubine-born sisters lived in the small courtyard at the back. Presumably, everyone was there now. "Third young lady, you're here. Madam has something to do and is not here. Come in and have a seat. I'll make you a cup of tea." Madam Zhang's head maidservant, Lu Mei, saw her and quickly came forward. However, she was a little anxious. Why did the third young lady come at this time? Didn't she have an important guest? Jingwan waved her hand. "How's Concubine Bai? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652933. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 53. I've already detained her. I'll deal with her later. How's it going over there? The child is gone. Concubine Bai is crying and making a fuss. It seems that it was planned. The madams of the other branches and the old madam were all alarmed. The old madam didn't come and handed the matter over to the old madam. I don't know what's going on now. Knowing that Jingwan already knew, she didn't hide it. I'll go and take a look. Third young lady, The old madam strictly forbade you from knowing about this from the beginning. She didn't want you to know about this, so you shouldn't go. The old madam is with her, and the old madam will handle it impartially. She won't let the old madam suffer. You see, if the third young lady went over and they couldn't stop her, she would be punished by the old madam. She really didn't want the third young lady to see such a troublesome thing. Jingwan paused. Where's my father? Is he not in the house? The second master went out to meet a friend. I've already sent someone to invite him. I don't know when he will be back. Okay, I'll go to grandmother. She had a big mountain to support her. If she went over, no one would say anything, and she wouldn't get the maids punished. At this point, even if the maids knew what Jingwan was going to do, they didn't dare to stop her. Madame Luo didn't seem to be surprised by Jingwan's arrival. Continue to protect her. It's because all of you protect her that she only grows older, but not wiser. She's already so old, but she's still as innocent and naive as a girl. When you get married in the future, I'll see what she'll do. Can she continue to rely on her husband and her son? Men spend most of their time outside. If someone really catches the opportunity, they'll definitely scheme against her. If 3 or 5 times aren't enough, they'll do it 8 or 10 times. Sooner or later, your father will have a grudge. Without your father's support, whatever Jingbo wants to do will be in vain. So before I get married, I have to quickly find a daughter-in-law who can help and protect her. Jingwan said with a flattering smile. How could Madame Luo not know what she was thinking? She glanced at her. I'm already worried enough about your marriage. You still want me to find a wife for Jingbo? Do you have the heart to let grandmother work so hard? What a heartless girl. Jingwan saw that her grandmother was angry, so she hurried forward and said, I'm not asking you to look for a candidate. I just hope that you can take a look at the candidate when father and the others decide. Seeing that Madame Luo was still unmoved, Jingwan softened her voice. She called her grandmother coquettishly and gently shook her arm. Her voice was so sweet that Jingwan herself almost had goosebumps. At first, Jingwan could still act coquettishly naturally, but after a long time, she felt like she was about to break down. Madame Luo saw that she was about to die and knew that she had reached her limit. She finally relaxed her expression and said helplessly, Okay, I promise you. In the beginning, he taught Jingwan how to show weakness at appropriate times. As for later, he seemed to enjoy watching Jingwan act coquettishly. The reason was that it was okay for a short period of time. After a while, Jingwan's little appearance made people very happy. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. It was simply killing her. In her previous life, before the family incident, although she wasn't arrogant, she was still proud and was flattered by everyone. After the incident, especially after her grandmother's health collapsed, whether it was the external environment or herself, she would never allow herself to be weak and would never show weakness to others. That kind of pride in her bones, even if it wasn't obvious in this life, was still there. Madame Luo stopped teasing her, but she thought of something else, and her face darkened. Sister Jia left because she knew about this. Jingwan nodded and briefly explained what happened. These idiots, there are some things that they never understand. Madame Luo didn't know whether to sigh or be angry. Jingwan hesitated for a moment and asked, Grandmother, how did third Aunt marry into our family? Although the Lu family was established as a duke and still had a noble title, with the decline of the Lu family, even if Madame Lu married into the Luo family, when Luo Peishan didn't hold the position of minister, it was still a proper marriage. Generally, even the families of 4th or 5th rank officials wouldn't look at them. Jingwan didn't look down on the Lu family, but in this place, where people paid attention to matching social status, it was strange that Madame Lu married into the Luo family. When your grandfather was young, he had some friendship with your third aunt's father and asked your grandfather for help. At that time, your eldest uncle was already married, and your father and mother were also engaged. Your 4th uncle was much younger than Madame Lu, so only your 3rd uncle, who was born of a concubine, was left. The Lu family didn't mind, so your grandfather agreed to this marriage. So that was it. However, this also created a pair of resentful couples. Whether it was Luo Rongping or Madame Lu, In fact, they looked down on each other from the bottom of their hearts. Madame Lu looked down on Luo Rongping because he was born of a concubine and resented that she became a mother the moment she married into the family. However, she didn't have the courage to break off the marriage. She also knew very well that with her situation at that time, she couldn't find a better husband than Luo Rongping. She was proud and arrogant, and Luo Rongping, who wasn't valued since childhood, used his arrogance to hide his inferiority. He despised the Lu family from the bottom of his heart, but he didn't dare to disobey Luo Peishan. Thus, for so many years, he lived peacefully and happily. Luo Rongping had a lot of beautiful women in his harem, but other than his eldest concubine son, Luo Jingming, and his eldest concubine daughter, Luo Jingxiang, there were only 2 or 3 children born of concubines. They were completely out of proportion to the huge group of beautiful women in his harem. Moreover, they were all relatively young. If they weren't weak, they were sickly. Many people in the Luo family knew that this was only because Madame Lu had loosened her grip on them in the past few years. As for whether it was because she had discovered her conscience, or because she wanted to accumulate some good karma for her children, or because she thought that their existence would no longer affect her and her children, only she knew. It wasn't that Luo Rongping didn't know her methods. Among the 4 brothers, he had the most concubines, but not many of them were pregnant. Even if they were pregnant, most of them would suffer miscarriages or die shortly after birth. Even if he had a pig's brain, he should have known what was going on. However, he didn't care and didn't ask. Even the concubines that he doted on at that time would at most criticize Madame Lu. They didn't scold her for being cruel and merciless, but they said that she didn't manage the household properly. Those who didn't know would think that he valued his wife. In fact, he was just selfish and cold by nature. He only cared about a moment of pleasure and could turn around and pretend that he didn't know anything. Outside, Luo Rongping had always been a person who cherished his reputation. He still wanted to have a bright future, a high position, and a generous salary. Naturally, his reputation couldn't be bad. Because Madame Lu was very clear about this, she became more and more unscrupulous. Luo Peishan was naturally not a person who would intervene in his son's backyard. It was just that he inadvertently learned about his 3rd son's absurd behavior. He also had the idea to punish him. However, when he found out that the husband and wife were just snakes and rats in a nest, he was too lazy to ask. As long as they didn't make a scene outside and become a joke, he would let them do whatever they wanted behind closed doors. Madame Luo naturally didn't want to care about concubine Bai's trivial matter. She left it to her eldest daughter-in-law to handle. If she went there, it would show that she didn't trust her eldest daughter-in-law. However, she also thought that Jingwan might come to find her, so she didn't say anything to her eldest daughter-in-law. Moreover, when Jingwan learned that her eldest aunt was handling this matter, she couldn't let her lose face. She also promised Madame Luo that she would just take a look. When they saw Madame Luo arrive, except for Madame Bai, who was lying in bed after the miscarriage, everyone hurriedly greeted her. Seeing Jingwan by her side, even if Madame Zhang was anxious, she couldn't say anything. Madame Bai, who was crying and howling like a shrew and refused to speak properly, automatically shut her mouth when she saw Madame Luo. Madame Luo, please forgive me, this concubine, that's enough. Lie down. Madame Luo interrupted her. Then she looked at Madame Bai. On the day she entered the capital, this woman should have greeted her at the gate, but she didn't have any impression of her. Willow leaf eyebrows, an oval face, and because of the miscarriage, her face was pale and she looked very weak. She was delicate and pitiful. However, Madame Luo's face didn't have the slightest fluctuation of emotion. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652934. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. That you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.